lot objectively things would be almost like if you could run the counterfactual, like if you had a time machine, you could run back in time and not do the lockdowns and stuff and then see what happens. And of course we can't do that. But the point is just that, like, look, they were wrong. It's almost objectively wrong about the lockdowns. It's so understood that they were wrong now that, let's just put it this way, the Biden administration is blaming the Trump administration for the lockdowns at this point. That's what Jen Psaki said when she was questioned about this study. Oh, well, look, the lockdowns were long. And she's like, well, the lockdowns happened in the previous administration. It's like, yeah, but it was your guy, Dr. Fauci, who was in there, like pushing them the whole time. But no, they just went, no, that was the previous administration. Even though Joe Biden was praising Cuomo and praising Newsom and all of the governors who were doing it at the time, they wiped their hands of that. We have nothing to do with that. That's Trump stuff. Okay, so everyone admits they were wrong about that.
White House blames Trump for COVID lockdowns. Yep. Oh my God, 5 days ago.
Yeah.
White House records. Jeez, that poor lady can't catch a break. I bet she would be normal without that job. That is just not her job.
Dude, how do they call you? They call you spreading misinformation. They have a professional liar who just goes out and bullshits and spreads misinformation. That's what the job is.
It's not good. But it's a weird gig, too, because, like, why does she speak for the president?
He picked her. He goes, I think you'd make a good face for a liar.
Well, it's also like when Trump was in office.
Mm-hmm.
The lady that I really liked at the end, what's her name? Kylie? Kayleigh McEnany?
Yes.
Yeah. She was the best at it. She brought receipts.
I've met her. She's very nice. She's a savage. She's
razor sharp.
Mm-hmm.
That lady, sure is. She brought receipts. When they would say something like Trump said this, she'd be like, interesting. Because on CNN, you said this, and then you said that, and you said this.
They go, Trump
Good
said this.
day, sir.
You just see her lick her thumb.
Okay. And then she would leave the podium, like, drop the mic.
Yeah.
She was very good at it.
She was. But it's just, so look, they got the lockdowns. They had segments on the about how the white thing was.
Well, at the time, they thought that was a thing to do. Though.
I'm just saying that's really what they got wrong.
Yes, they got that wrong. But I don't think that is categorized as misinformation. It's not like contrary information together. At that time, like, they were dealing with the stuff that was coming off of those cruise ships. And one of the things off those cruise ships, they were finding evidence that COVID lived on surfaces of the station. So that's just where they got so crazy.
I think that's something they got wrong. I'm just making a point. It's not as if the officials are getting everything right. They're getting a lot of this wrong. And it's hard to know. With a lot of the other things, you never know for sure exactly what they were wrong about.
Shoot that screamer!
The point is that you can't silence anybody who's saying, I don't think the official answer to this is correct, because you don't know that you're correct. They were wrong about
Quit your bitching, old man.
Turns out they were wrong about indoor masking.
You think we're being watched? I'm not giving up.
What? They've also Fauci himself admitted to kind of this noble lie thing. Yes. That he would say things that he knew were lies, but because these lies would get the best, response out of them. And in that case, how do you trust anything that the guy has to say?
You don't. Right. You don't. One thing that masks do is they let people know that you're not masked.
Yeah, you didn't vote for Trump.
No, it's like not even that. It's like you want people to be safe. Like when you walk into a restaurant, I'm not saying now. Like now it's kind of preposterous, but it's still enforced. There was a guy who just got pulled out of some
Hear that?
He was a
Get them up off the ground!
He was in the audience for doing a mask on. They physically assaulted him because he never a mask on. Folks, you're looking around all these people with cloth masks on. This is nonsense. It's been proven to be nonsense. We know it's nonsense. But at one point in time, we didn't know it was nonsense. And you go to a restaurant and you wear a mask, people
y'all didn't pick them up, bro.
And I think that was a good thing. It was like a way of like
doing everything I can out here in these streets.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think the problem what we're dealing with these news sources is the same kind of problem we're talking about The View, and the same kind of problem when they're talking about me, is that the answer to, like, if people...
I wasn't even in there for a hot second, but I just got mad points picking up so many people.
The answer is to you to do better. The answer is for you
Fuck
to
it.
have better arguments.
What I
When
cuss
you're
somebody?
on
Let's see.
television
Class.
talking about how I'm taking horse paste, and you know that's not true. I'm taking horse dewormer. Instead of saying, which you should have said, how did Joe Rogan get better so quick? How come he got COVID that's killing everybody and he was better in 5 days? Negative in 5 days, working out in 6 days. How come? That's never discussed. So it's like, he's taking ivermectin. I think ivermectin was one of the things that I took that did something, but I think really monoclonal antibodies was the big one. And that's the stuff that got Trump better in 4 days. He wasn't taking ivermectin. I think there's something legitimately really beneficial about monoclonal antibodies. It's been proven. But yet they just pulled them. They pulled the authorization for them, which I don't understand that at all. Why don't they discuss that? Why don't they have an expert on explains why, even though there is still a prevalence of Delta cases, they still exist, and monoclonal antibodies are very effective against Delta.
Right. So, I mean, all of this is kind of like predicated on the assumption that they're being honest and trying to. Why wouldn't they talk about
But
this?
they
or
should.
I
because,
agree.
But this is my perspective. If you're in business and your business is the news, and you want to get more people to pay attention, you should be honest. And my thoughts for CNN, my advice to them, I don't hate CNN. I used to go to them every day for the news until they started fucking hating on me. But if you want to do better, just fucking change your model. Change the way you do it. Stop this editorial perspective with guys like Brian Stelter and Don Lemon that nobody listens to. Nobody is like chiming in saying, oh yeah, finally we get the voice of reason. Nobody thinks that. Have people that give out effective news, objective news rather, and I'll support you.
You know
I
what
will
I
turn
said?
around 100%, and I'll be one of the people that tells people, I saw this on CNN, watch this on CNN. CNN has a different business model. They're just being objective news now. I'm with you.
I said this once to Essie Cup and Don Lemon back when I was working over there at Turner, and I said to them, and I wasn't even like really trying. Like I don't want to help them, but sometimes you just can't help. Like just give your like advice. And I said, and this was in 2017, if you can remember the environment back then. And I said, look, if you guys really, you know what you guys could do that would really help, and hear me out because I know you're not going to like this. Give Trump credit for something. Pick something you like. One thing you've liked. Maybe it was the First Step Act, that criminal justice reform, you know? That where he let some people who were doing life for pot or whatever out of jail. Pick one thing you like and really praise him for it. And then the next time you criticize him, it'll hit much harder.
Yes.
Because people will be like, well, yeah, look, they give him credit when they think he did something right, and they'll hit him hard when they think he
very
does something
wise.
wrong. They go, because what you're doing right now is it's just all day, every day. Trump did the worst thing ever. Trump did, and now people are like, you're just in the business of trying to make him look stupid. So even if your goal is to make him look stupid, it doesn't have any weight to it. You know, like it's not gonna
But it's
work.
that thing. It's like they're confined by their format. They're confined by their environment. They're confined by these small segments that last for 7 minutes or whatever it is in between commercials. They have producers that are overlooking everything they say. You don't get like a real, like an honest perspective.
No,
you get a
bye.
corporate perspective.
Yeah,
You
that's
get-
right.
There's a mandate. There's like, or rather, like there's a format that they're trying to make sure that everybody abides by, and then there's a narrative that you have to follow.
Well, the thing that's crazy too is that, you know, and you were saying if they were going to tell the truth or be honest, is that so the last time I was on the show, back what was it, in April, I think, of 2021, we had that clip that went viral that Fauci called you out for. And I was rewatching it the other day, watching the clip and then watching his response to it. And it's funny thinking about this with the childhood obesity numbers that we were just looking at and all this stuff. And basically what you said was, you go, you know, if you're a 20-year-old healthy person, what I'd advise you to do with COVID is make sure you're still really healthy. Make sure you're getting a lot of
it's kind
exercise
of paraphrasing,
in the
but
sunlight. But now you said, I don't know if you need the vaccine. It's like, what's really important is you being really healthy. This was the spirit of what you said. And Fauci's response to this, which I was literally just listening to the other day, does not age well. It's really, first off, he's like, no, Joe Rogan, what you don't understand is that you get the vaccine to protect other people. Because if you get it, you can't spread it. You know, and you're like, well, that didn't age so well. And then he says at one point, he goes, if you don't get the vaccine, and this is almost word for word what he said. You could pull up this clip, Fauci responds to Joe Rogan and see it, but it was almost word for word what he said was, he goes, if you're a healthy 20-year-old and you get COVID, you may not experience any symptoms, but you will likely spread it to a bunch of other people. And his claim was that an asymptomatic person will likely spread it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but if you're looking at what is misinformation, or let's just say incorrect information, I do not think the science backs up the idea that someone with no symptoms will likely spread it to other people.
I don't think that's correct. I think you're incorrect. This is what I think happens. I think what is asymptomatic, what categorized as asymptomatic, is you don't feel that bad. And if you don't feel that bad, you can spread it. There's a lot of people with very healthy immune systems, especially young people, that can spread it and they give it to their parents. Their parents get really fucking sick.
Certainly that does happen.
Their grandparents get really fucking sick. And their case is technically asymptomatic. Okay. All they have is like a headache. That's real.
Sure. No, listen. Now that might happen, and I guess those would be mild symptoms technically, right? If you have like some
people
symptoms.
think of it as asymptomatic because you don't have COVID symptoms. Like you don't have fevers, you're not in the hospital, you're not coughing, you don't have respiratory issues. You can easily give it to someone and have the most mild of symptoms. Like here's something that I need to correct, okay, or I need to express myself. Because a lot of people think that I think COVID's not a big deal. That's not the case at all. I think it's a very big deal to a lot of people. But it's not a big deal for everybody. It depends entirely upon the individual. And one of my problems with all this whole thing is this enforcement of this one-size-fits-all approach to health. And I don't buy that.
So by the way, just to be clear, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, COVID is a really nasty virus, and it has killed a lot of people. Yeah. And if you are sick and have a weakened immune system, if you have comorbidities, you do not want to get this thing. It is very dangerous. Less so with Omicron, but still, it's still dangerous. And so that's, I completely agree with you on that. I'm just saying that, look, first of all, the claim was, if you want to talk about bad information that may have led to real damage in COVID, Joe Biden, the President of the United States, straight up said, if you get the vaccine, you will not get or spread COVID. Rachel Maddow said, we know for a fact, this is it now. You get the vaccine, it stops the flu, it doesn't go on. Now think about this, and I don't know exactly, I don't know if anyone can measure these numbers. How many people got these vaccines, like when they first came out, and then thought to themselves, well, I can't get COVID now, maybe had what you're saying, the sniffles, had mild symptoms, and then possibly COVID, become vaccinated, and went and spread that to a whole bunch of people. So I'm not saying, like, I've been talking about COVID and the COVID regime for like basically 2 years on my podcast. I'm sure I've gotten some things wrong. I'm not saying you haven't gotten some things wrong, and like maybe like that's true. But for anyone to be pointing the finger, like you got things wrong and this is dangerous and led to all of this, like the most catastrophically wrong things that have really led to real world catastrophes have all been coming out of CNN, MSNBC, and the White House, and Dr. Fauci, and all of them. That's all I'm saying. I completely agree with you. COVID is nasty. A lot of people have lost people. You know, even if it's somebody who's like, you know, if you're 91 and you have several, you know, health problems, but you would have lived till say 95, and you get COVID and die at 91. I mean, that's awful. That's awful. That person might have had 4 more years with their grandchildren and their children and all of that. It's a horrible thing. And it's terrible. I'm just, you know, anyway, just to make that clear, I agree with you. It's a nasty virus. I'm just more concerned with the totalitarian regimes that are sweeping the entire Western world.
But that's the problem, right? The real problem is that once you give governments power, they don't give it back. They don't want to give it back. What's fascinating to me is watching what's going on. Do not let them through! Because the truckers have taken over Ottawa, right? They've just overwhelmed Ottawa with thousands and thousands of trucks. And so now they have these laws where you're not allowed to refuel them, you're not allowed to give them food. GoFundMe tried to steal the money, which is wild. They got $10 million in donations to the truckers, and GoFundMe thought it would be great if they gave that money to charities of their choice. You fucking imagine the gall of that after they listen. I'm not saying they shouldn't have supported Black Lives Matter. I think you should support. I think GoFundMe should be available to anyone who wants to use it for anything that's people can argue that it's a good cause. And the Ottawa truckers, a lot of people think that's a good cause. Black Lives Matter, a lot of people thought that was a good cause. The fact that you can make a distinction between one and the other, if they had taken all the money that was donated to Black Lives Matter and they said, you know what, we don't agree with this, we're going to give it away to the charities that we choose. But fuck you are.
Yeah.
People would go goddamn crazy.
And a charity that's kind of like, even though they shouldn't be like opposed to each other, but that's just like on the other side of the political aisle. Like if you went, oh, Black Lives Matter, we're actually going to give that money to like some pro-life charity or something like that.
In
you know,
Quebec, you can't buy groceries unless you're vaccinated. We need to look at this and make sure this is true. But when you get to that,
I know someone was telling us this last night.
Yes.
It was a Canadian, so he
Yes.
might be right about that. But that is, yeah. See, make sure that's true.
yeah, let's make sure that's true. It's wild. And the way Trudeau talks about people who are unvaccinated, the way he says they're misogynist and racist, rather. He said they were misogynist and racists and.
You're in the demonized class all of a
But
sudden.
you're deciding, you're taking people that have a perspective on medical intervention, and you're deciding that you're going to demonize them in the worst possible way with no evidence.
And isn't it something that so many of these people that say who don't want the mandates, that they were the heroes. Right. These were the essential workers, the healthcare workers. These were the people in New York City. They were clapping at 6 p.m. every day for these workers. And there'll be nurses who worked through a year and a half of the pandemic.
And they didn't want to get the shot.
Didn't want to get the shot. And now all of a sudden, these are the. You're out of there.
Not only that,
Sorry,
the
hero.
CDC has shown that these nurses, which most of them got COVID.
Oh, I'll say this: if you were working through the pandemic the whole
And you
time,
weren't vaccinated,
100% of them either got COVID or learned how to protect themselves from getting COVID. There's no other option, right? It has to be one.
Literally around COVID positive patients all day long.
Yeah.
But one we're learning from this whole pandemic is not just about authoritarianism and a lot of the issues that we're dealing with about ideologies and how rigid people are, but also about how fragile our civilization truly is when confronted with any kind of adversity.
Yeah.
Like
That's exactly right.
People are so fragile, and most people rely upon existing structures, whether it's the office they work at, whether it's the neighborhood they're in. They rely on these sort of structures in order to have any semblance of normalcy in life. And when forced upon themselves to be confronted with the unknown, to be confronted with open-ended possibilities and having to make like moral and ethical decisions based on your values and how you feel about people, not based on whether people want you to condemn someone for their choices or attack people for choices. Like, I know a lot of people that hate people that have been vaccinated. I'm like, do you know how crazy that? I don't know them personally, but I mean people online. I've seen them. Like attacking people. Like they attack Trump. They boo Trump because he talks about how you should get vaccinated. I got it. You should get it. I think you should get it. It's a good thing. And they're like,
I thought that was so interesting, though. Just like the politics of it goes so interesting to see Trump losing his base, and then like how he handles that, and then he's caught between this thing where like Donald Trump's like he's got the narrative in his head figured out. He's like, well, I did the vaccines and I'm the greatest, so that's the greatest, and I get all the credit. But then he's losing his people.
Unvaccinated to be accommodated at all times in Canadian Walmarts, Costco's to ensure they're buying pharmacy products only.
What?
Accompanied, excuse me. Unvaccinated to be accompanied at all times.
So to make sure they're not getting food?
Yes. They have to buy pharmacy products only.
So how do they eat?
Well, I don't know, but in Quebec, that's what this guy was saying. In Quebec, you can't go to a grocery store. Vaccine passports to enter the vicinity went into effect on Monday. This mandate includes all businesses. The surface is but here today in Alberta, I think they dropped their vaccine mandates. And I think this is in response to Trump.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
truckers
you
are.
find that.
You don't want to fuck with truckers, man.
You need them to get your stuff.
We really all are. We like to be
them.
very removed.
Yeah.
From how my father-in-law is a trucker, so I know a little bit about the trucking world. Great guy, by the way. One of the smartest people I know too. And he's a trucker, and all his friends are truckers and stuff. So I like kind of just from marrying my wife and my father-in-law, I kind of know about that world a little bit. But it's unbelievable how easy it is to not even kind of think about it.
Yeah.
Not even think about how vital this is. Like, I don't know, on a computer, I order a thing that's there's no trucks involved. You know, but then you get out on the highway and you're like, what are all these big cars everywhere? You know, but like you're like, no, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
As much technology as we have, this entire economy is all still built off shit being trucked from one place to another. That's how your gasoline gets to the gas station. That's how your food gets to the grocery store. It's a big deal.
Yeah, this is a different thing though, Jamie. I want you to pull up Alberta drops vaccine mandate or mask mandate. Because you're on Google, bitch. Get on DuckDuckGo, you find it right away.
DuckDuckGo is on this.
Google it on DuckDuckGo or DuckDuckGo it.
Well, Jamie, you can't Google it on DuckDuckGo. You have to DuckDuckGo your way there.
He's so Googled. He's so corporate. I think Jamie's been secretly sponsored by Google.
You know DuckDuckGo is also.
Oh.
I'm just saying. I'm not the first person.
You're gonna throw an accusation. You're gonna besmirch the good name of DuckDuckGo right here.
Loading fresh ammo.
Ball back.
Canadian provinces begin backing off vaccine mandates.
Begin.
They should be ready for me!
Alberta caves to trucker protest ends vaccine. Click on that one. Washington Times. Alberta caves to Canada trucker protest ends vaccine passport. That's what I said. Get off of Google.
The Washington
Get off of
Times.
Google,
I don't
bro.
know that that's the #1 source of my.
Is CNN better?
I wouldn't have picked that either.
What is the Washington Times? Is that even a real newspaper?
That's all my point.
I mean, it sounds like a real one.
You know how I judge newspapers based on how much quality at the bottom. And then you get to the bottom. Do you want to live forever?
I look at the sponsored stories.
Yeah, there they go. Okay, look at the sponsored story. Never Trump, Tony Bloomberg, picked up by CNN after resigning from Fox News. Yeah.
Stories they're trying to push, and you go, all right, what is the headline you're
But
pushing?
hold on, these are real stories. Nancy Pelosi's son allegedly tied to fraud and bribery scheme. I believe that.
Sounds legit.
Rep Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez staying off Twitter due to backlash. Is she staying off Twitter? How the fuck do you know? How do you know? You have her phone? The fuck are you talking about? I know she's off Twitter because I got her phone. I'm so tired of talking about this. I'm so tired of talking about COVID. I'm so tired of talking about the pandemic. One of the things that I really loved about coming here to Texas is that they didn't treat us. My friends in California are still living in hell.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are tired of all of this. You know, like you were saying before, when you're like, if you're on social media, you have this perspective of the world.
Yeah.
And then, like, if you remove yourself from that, it's almost like you remind yourself that
Cover me, I'm
this is real life.
It's a real life.
You know, it's like you when you get on like, and a lot of people I think are really tired of the COVID regime. They just want to go back to normal life. A lot of people are really tired of culture war bullshit because so much of it is manufactured, and they just want to go back to real life. You just don't see this as, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all. And I've noticed it in stand-up comedy, that it's things have changed where, like, particularly in, like, liberal cities, certain things that you talk about trigger audience members more and things like that. But in general in life,
Somebody help them!
you just kind of, like, you go, you could watch, like, social justice warriors, like, colleagues, this activist on a fatphobic person we were saying before, so all this, like, white privilege and this and that and all of this. Oh my gosh, it's like, all racism is everywhere. And then you, like, go to the supermarket, you know, like, hey, you know, some black guy steps in front of me and is like, oh, excuse me. I'm like, oh, you're good, sir.
Can I get a pound of roast beef?
Everyone's, where's the peaches? Yeah, like, everyone's just I used to use this example a lot as, like, what I just, like, said, like, a flea market, like, does to people. Is that just because I'm Jewish and I live in New York City that I'd be like, I can literally like walk outside. This is before Uber. I used to say this all the time, but you can put your hand up and
Hey, Timo, what's up?
with a Muslim.
How you doing?
Driving, and I'm a Jew. I just put my hand up, and I get in, and he drives me to where I want to go, and then he goes, "Thank you, sir. God bless." And I go, "Thank you, sir. Have a good day." And that's just, and it's just because like, well, he wants some money, and I want a ride, and we're all kind of working together, and
Well,
we might have
also, it's
wildly
like-
different views, but we get past it.
I like different people. I like
Yeah.
talking to like a guy who's a Sikh. I like talking to a guy who, you know, comes from Scotland. I want different people. It's fun.
See, this is
That's one of the beautiful things about New York City is that it's so filled with so many different folks, and everybody has to interact with each other. The thing about LA that fucks everybody up, one of the things, is that everyone's in their goddamn car. So you're in this isolated environment, and you go to where you're gonna go, and you don't ever just melt with everybody. And New York City, when you're on the street, man, everybody's walking. It's just filled with all kinds of people from all parts of the world.
it's a it's a crazy thing, but it was a real interesting place to grow up, and I loved New York City. I hope it comes back to being kind of the vibrant city that it once was.
How is this Eric Adams guy doing?
I think he's terrible so far.
Really?
Real disappointment.
I like the
He's-
fact that he hired his brother. Yeah, a fat job.
Yeah, whatever. I think that's fine.
His brother's last job was parking cars for like $20 an hour. Now he makes $250,000 a year. What's up?
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Brother
He's
gave him
taking
the
care of his
hookup.
family.
I like that.
Now he doubled down on all of the COVID stuff right away.
Do you think
it's just
that
been terrible?
that wasn't like his plan getting into office allegedly, right? Didn't he have like a different?
I mean, I think he said things that were almost vague enough to not turn the voters who might not have liked that off. But it was like right away.
But isn't
That's
he
what
like
did.
his thing is he's a former cop, so his thing is to be more tough on crime, and people are very excited about that, right?
Well, I think that was one of the big appeals of him because crime has really risen quite a bit over the last couple of years in New York.
Is it me or is there windows open and no heat on?
You know, like New York when
It's
I
fucking freezing in here for some
born
reason.
in 83,
My windows are closed over here. My computer's blowing hot air, but I am shivering from the legs. I got goose and
like my whole
bumps.
life, the crime rate was going down and down and down and down, and then all of a sudden it started coming back, and people sort of very upset. So I think that was a big part of his appeal.
I don't know. I don't think it was ever on there.
Street crime, and understandably, people were attracted to that message. But I think it was very, very a bad sign to me that immediately getting in there, the first thing he did was like continue the emergency power acts and the vaccine passport and all that stuff. So
I think they're dropping the mask mandates, though. I think that's the new
I saw that in New Jersey they're saying they're going to drop the mask mandates for schools, which is really great news, and I think that's incredible. It's one of those things that, like, you know,
Hey, you left
I
it
know you
open
say
during
talking about it, but one of the
one
things
time when it was ice.
is, you know,
I'm exhausted.
masking up kids. I think it's just horrible.
It is horrible.
I-
I'm wondering what the world's gonna look
Like back in November, end of November and
I
shit.
wonder what's gonna change, whether or not we're gonna get out of this. bad.
No, I'm good.
Like, you know, that's one of the
Info,
things that
this
does
is Rescue
happen.
Leader. Where the hell are you?
I can catch Super Bowl later.
Sweeping the last sector. 10 minutes.
Negative. Get to
possibility
the
and
evac bus. We need escort now.
And it's not
There could still be
completely
people
outside the
in these
realm of
houses.
possibility that
We got reports
do
of infected in your area, and we're out of time.
100%.
Last ship
I'm
leaves in
optimistic.
35.
I think that
Time to go.
that
Stay quiet.
first off, I just think there's no
Hello?
option, so you might as well
Can
be
anyone hear me?
optimistic. And I
What
think
are you
that there
doing?
is, you know, even if, like, from my perspective, where I'm like, but I look around at this and I see the fact that I think the collapse of the trust in all of these institutions is a great thing. I think the fact that people are like waking up to this stuff is incredible.
It is because we have a because we have the Glenn Greenwalds and the Matt Taibbi's and the Crystals and Saunders and because they exist, yes.
Steam boost.
Yeah, and also just that I think that we can, like,
No,
the capability
bro, I'm a healer. What the fuck? Never mind.
a more prosperous, a free,
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
society than ever before. We just haven't put it all together yet, and that's like a growing process.
Shun the voices that disagree with that.
This will do just fine.
Re-educate people to the fact that, like, the most important thing is getting along, compassion, being kind, being a part of a community, being nice to each other.
What I hope is that we learn from everything over, say,
Sounds like those shots came from the bus.
I don't know, 5 years or so.
What's your status?
Enemy
And I
contact.
think
We're
what I
okay,
was
but
saying.
that sun is going to bring more. Heading to you now.
This is a big part of the reason why.
By the way, I'm about to go down.
And this is one of the things that comes with the COVID stuff in general is that now politics became everything.
This will be useful.
Politics became finding out, whether you're allowed to go to work or whether you're allowed to visit your father or whether you're allowed, everything was dictated by a government. And political differences are like wars. Even when they're mini wars.
Okay, then it's just me.
It's like it's a war. When you have a political difference with somebody,
I believe it.
Now
I really do.
over who is
I told you,
going
we already know I got issues with staying
We'll
warm.
never make it.
tensions rise so
Huh?
high over is it going to be Hillary or Trump?
Okay.
Biden or
We
Trump?
can't
Because
risk going in
one
without
of you
you.
is going to lose and have to be ruled over by the other one.
Do you remember when Biden won and then they started putting out lists of people that supported Trump?
Yeah.
Like
keep us
legitimate
waiting.
politicians like AOC, we should compile a list.
Like
What the fuck are you saying?
And but here's what's so fascinating. I was saying that I was at this event called Freedom Fest in South Dakota this summer. A really cool
That sounds like the
event.
last place.
But what you been up to, Tima?
Freedom Fest in South Dakota.
We've reached your position, rescue leader.
Loved it.
Moving
Okay,
to the tunnel.
not the strong point, the food, but it was some really great people there, and South Dakota also, by the way,
South
has
Dakota doesn't have a
zero
food-
restrictions.
No
Never
steakhouse?
had any.
Oh, that's right. But North Dakota did.
Yes.
And North Dakota suffered greatly.
Yes, that's
where
right.
South
Here,
Dakota
here.
thrived,
That's-
right?
Yes, the only state in the union that never had a lockdown for one day, never had a mask mandate, never had any mandate by the state. They were great on
Who's
COVID.
the mayor?
No.
right.
Christy, no. She didn't do so great. She did a little bit of pot. She had a real.
I have a door in charge.
She was great on COVID.
They're all over.
Anyway,
Help!
but so I was talking there to the crowd about like this stuff, like the idea of political differences versus differences. And I was like, look, like if you there's a Christian sitting next to an atheist. Like, it was like a big crowd. Like, it was like 1,000 people. It was like somewhere, this is true.
I have a
Christian
defense
sitting next to
kit.
an atheist. You guys have the most profound differences.
A
in the
lot
way
better
you
than
view the
nothing.
world. I mean, like, literally one of you believes the other one is gonna burn in a pit of fire for eternity. And the other one
Screamer is calling in more. Thanks. Steam boost. Bring that screamer down.
Way too close.
Got it.
like, it's only when the differences are political that it becomes this crazy culture.
Reloading.
Because it interferes with your life. Like if
Yes.
this guy doesn't eat bacon because it's in the Quran, that doesn't fuck with you.
But if it becomes political, let's say that the school that your kids go to, the public school,
Firing the
is
steam
now gonna teach
boost.
Muslim prayer in the school. You go, well, wait a minute. I don't want my kids being indoctrinated with stuff I don't believe in. So my point is just that when you reduce government, like when you reduce government intervention, when you reduce the size and scope of government, what you end up getting is more peace. You end up getting things where it's like people can have disagreements. We can have different cultural preferences. We can have different feelings about gender or whatever. Like we can have all COVID, whatever it is, and we don't have to go to war with each other. And I really do think that, like, I believe that in order for this country to survive and to thrive, we need liberty. That's like the answer. It's the answer to all of it. We need the government to stop doing all of the things that it's doing, and we need a spirit of liberty where it's like, look, we can disagree with each other and not have to go to war with each other.
So let me ask you this: like, being a libertarian and reducing government is really, really important. So if that's the case, what are the things that get drastically reduced? Like,
Focus fire on the big one.
what are the things that you feel
The bull is dead.
Right. I mean,
That's it.
said
All
besides
clear.
that, it's a little just number one is ending all of the wars. I mean, it's just been
Rescue
it's
leader, why are we
one
stopped?
disaster after
Road
another.
barriers.
Millions
Safe to keep
of innocent
civilians
people
from
have
jamming
been
the
killed
port.
as a result of the wars.
We can lower them. I know there's a control panel nearby.
No.
Copy.
Yes, we should end every last one of them. And the biggest one right now is what's going on in Yemen.
Found
All
the
of
shit.
us are
You
gonna
talking
escalate
about
that.
Yemen again?
Yes.
But you were on CE Cup 5 years ago.
It's still, and literally, and no one listened to me then. And unfortunately, no one has yet announced.
Auto turret unlocked.
But it's still working. So, So basically, Obama
Going through
started a
but
war
working.
in Yemen. I mean, it was Obama
Defensive. Use whatever
government
you can
working
find.
with the
Come check
Saudis
this out.
to launch a war against the Houthis in Yemen. And basically, the backstory to it is that Obama had really, the Saudis were pissed off at our government. They're a big trade partner. But number one, they were against the war that George W. Bush started. They were the only ones who saw obviously how this was going to go. And they were like, you know, their big enemy is
This
Iran.
should hold them back.
And they were like, well, if you overthrow the Sunni minority government in Iraq, obviously the Shiites are going to
Reloading.
but America wanted to do it, Israel wanted to do it, all of the Muslims wanted to do it, the war and the war happened went exactly that way. It was the gift deal ring. And then Obama
Oh shit.
He said in order to placate the Saudis, he supported their
Hold
war
still. You'll be
against the
okay.
Houthis
You're good.
in Yemen.
Let's move.
So we got involved in a war
We're going through.
which has turned into a genocide to placate one of the most evil governments in the world, the Saudis. So Obama, that's what Obama, the man who won the Nobel
Technically, they were
Peace
already
Prize,
dead.
gave us. Because besides, you know, for funding the Ladenite Islamists in Libya and Syria committing literal treason and should be tried for war crimes and literally spend the rest of his life in a cage for what he did in Yemen. Literally launched a war of genocide to placate the Saudis.
Is that really the only way to us
I mean, yeah, they're basically they're a big business partner of ours, and we were pissed off when they told us
Bring that fool down. Somebody stop me.
with American weapons. First of all, like,
Need to be more careful.
as they were doing this, and they're I mean, they're bombing like they're bombing farms, and they're bombing, you know, and they put a full blockade around the country. So there's something at one point there was in the ballpark of 1 million cases of cholera. I'm not sure if they were actually all cholera or there was some other similar like infections that were, but it's been hundreds of thousands of people who have died in this war. The UN said it was the #1 humanitarian crisis in the world, and these are
Drive,
you know,
rescue leader.
infectious diseases that are targeting or that disproportionately hit babies.
The
I
gate.
mean, there's babies
We can
dying.
cut through here.
And Yemen, by the way,
Steam
before
boot.
this was the poorest country in the Middle East, and they put a full blockade around the country. And this has been going on forever. Obama started it. Trump continued it through his entire presidency. Funded, funded the Saudis even more than Obama had. Gave them even more, weapons. And Biden said he was going to end it. He said he was going to end the war. And there were people,
Screamer!
Rand Paul were both this is genocide. And Biden said he was going to end it. Backed off of that money.
Steam boost. Unseal boost.
So,
Reload.
anyway, that's big stuff. So, what government should stop
I'm down.
doing? That's like the biggest one.
Firing the steam boost.
Anyway, on top of that, I would say all
Firing steam boost.
Sure. So what?
The screamer is calling in more.
Getting involved in wars that
They're coming in.
are is it negotiations in terms of oil access,
I got the last one.
region? Is it like
there's
compromises?
So there's several
Reload.
big like financial. Number one, Saudi Arabia buys a tremendous amount of weapons So they're worth a lot of money for weapons manufacturers. There's also the whole petrodollar thing.
Steam boost.
It has been this agreement for a long time that Saudi Arabia will peg their oil to U.S. dollars and only trade in dollars. And this does a lot to keep our currency afloat.
That was the reason. That was part of the reason why they were the rat house, right? Didn't that have something to do with?
I see a bug. I think it's clear. Let's go.
Their oil
Hiroshi,
dollar anymore.
was LA this bad when you were there?
Saddam Hussein around the year had a plan to start trading oil, gold, and other assets, and not using dollars anymore. I've also seen people say that Gaddafi had plans to be in on this. I don't know if that's true or not.
This will
I do
do.
think it's interesting. I do know that very shortly after we got off the gold standard, after Richard Nixon put us on the gold took us off the gold standard, that we made this deal with Saudi Arabia in the 70s.
If
They
it
would
shoots,
only
I'll
trade
take it.
oil for dollars, which in some ways kind of gold anymore, but they are redeemable for oil, and so you got some commodity kind of behind the money, and that allows us to print as much money as we want to without suffering the consequences of it quite as drastically, because there's still some value to the money for other people for our dollar around the world. I'm sure there's other motivations that I don't know about, that I don't know for sure what they are. But I do know that hundreds of thousands of innocent people are being slaughtered over these wars. So whatever exactly the motivation is, it ain't worth it. And it's also one more crazy, addition to all of this is that we're fighting on the side
On the
of
turret set.
over there. Like Al-Qaeda is fighting the Houthis. There's still a pretty sizable Al-Qaeda presence in the Arabian Peninsula, and particularly in Yemen. And they're the enemies of the Houthis.
This will do
We're
just
fighting on the
fine.
side of Saudi Arabia and Al-Qaeda against the Houthis because Iran is trying to go. It's nuts. And we need to just stop doing it. And it's insane. While our country's falling apart, we're still trying to
Focus fire on the big one.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they would
team
argue
forward the
that.
parking garage.
CIA guy
Roger
or
T4,
someone who's,
holding for enemy
involved
contact.
in this sort of international politics.
Yes.
This is a
Explain-
beauty.
Not saying that you agree with them, but explain
Shit.
to you the motivation or why they
Firing up, but eyes on the hider.
Well, yeah,
Eyes open for a look.
I have talked to several of
Changing
them and
level.
I've heard a lot of their arguments. By the way, there's also a lot of those guys who would agree with me on this, or I would agree with them. I should probably say more accurately. I mean, I highly recommend anybody
Messing with the wrong guy.
going on to listen to
Incoming
Colonel
from the
Douglas
cargo
Ray,
terminal.
who is as smart and as decorated as you could possibly be. He's the guy who really makes the argument best that we should be completely out of all of these wars. Is he retired? Yeah. Yeah. But he was
Steam
actually,
boost.
he was McMahon
Bring that screamer down.
at one point. But McMaster, rose up against political stuff a little bit better than him.
You shot me.
But yeah, there are people who make these arguments, but really these arguments that, they come down to like, well, like the way the war controls. Like, well, we had to
Firing the steam boost. They're climbing the gate.
people, or we had to go into Libya because it was a bad side, or we had to go into Florida. Yemen, they don't really try to make this argument. It's kind of like, there's no real point.
And it's been going on for how many years now?
They're getting over the gate.
And you're talking about years?
Go for headshots.
Yeah. And now we're talking about
Steam boost. They're climbing the gate.
Yes.
Reloading.
I just watched the documentary.
Be alert. I see a hider.
Finished it last night. It is a crazy documentary. And I think it's called The Lack. But it's about this very controversial that I've been
Steam
obsessed with.
boost.
I get obsessed with people that believe things that don't necessarily
You don't stand a chance.
through collection.
They're climbing the gate. Firing the steam boost. Don't shoot me. Man down. Get them help.
I'm okay, thanks.
Help. Help me.
But it might be very valuable.
I need meds.
Someone found a drawing recently that someone bought.
Welcome back.
Have them down. I need help, please. On your feet. I can't get up.
God damn it.
I can't get up.
I'm down. Kill me. You better hurry up.
Shit.
That's a wrap there.
I can't get up.
Art experts who start going over it and they think it's the lost Leonardo da Vinci. And so they have to, truly is when confronted with any kind of adversity.
Yeah.
Like
That's exactly right.
people are so fragile, and most people rely upon existing structures, whether it's the office they work at, whether it's the neighborhood they're in. They rely on these sort of structures in order to have any semblance of normalcy in life. And when forced upon themselves to be confronted with the unknown, to be confronted with open-ended possibilities and having to make like moral and ethical decisions based on your values and how you feel about people, not based on whether people want you to condemn someone for their choices or attack people for choices. Like, I know a lot of people that hate people that have been vaccinated. I'm like, do you know how crazy that? I don't know them personally, but I mean people online. I've seen them. Like attacking people. Like they attack Trump. They boo Trump because he talks about how you should get vaccinated. I got it. You should get it. I think you should get it. It's a good thing. And they're like,
I thought that was so interesting, though. Just like the politics of it goes so interesting to see Trump losing his base, and then like how he handles that, and then he's caught between this thing where like Donald Trump's like he's got the narrative in his head figured out. He's like, well, I did the vaccines and I'm the greatest, so that's the greatest, and I get all the credit. But then he's losing his people.
Unvaccinated to be accommodated at all times in Canadian Walmarts, Costco's to ensure they're buying pharmacy products only.
What?
Accompanied, excuse me. Unvaccinated to be accompanied at all times.
So to make sure they're not getting food?
Yes. They have to buy pharmacy products only.
So how do they eat?
Well, I don't know, but in Quebec, that's what this guy was saying. In Quebec, you can't go to a grocery store unless you're vaccinated. Vaccine passports to enter the vicinity went into effect on Monday. This mandate includes all businesses with surfaces. But here today in Alberta, I think they dropped their vaccine mandates. And I think this is in response to the truckers.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
truckers
so you
are.
can find that.
You don't want to fuck with truckers, man.
You need them to get your stuff.
We really all are. We like to be very removed.
Yeah.
From how now, my father-in-law is a trucker, so I know a little bit about the trucking world. He's a great guy, by the way. One of the smartest people I know too. And he's a trucker, and all his friends are truckers and stuff. So I like kind of just from marrying my wife, and he's my father-in-law. Like kind of know about that world a little bit. But it's unbelievable how easy it is to not even kind of think about it.
Yo.
Think about how vital this is. Like I don't know what you're talking about. I go on my computer,
Yo,
and order a thing.
5-0.
There were no trucks
Someone
involved.
drives it, bro.
But then
Po-po.
you get on the highway, and you're like,
Whatever you want to call yourself.
cars
Yo.
everywhere. But like,
man.
you're
Ready
like,
up.
That's the whole thing.
So we can.
It's
So
the
it start.
technologies we have. This entire economy is all still built off shit being trucked from one place to another. That's how your gasoline gets to the gas station. That's how your food gets to the grocery store. It's a big deal.
Yeah, this is a different thing though, Jamie. I want you to pull up Alberta drops vaccine mandate
I'm Googling, like,
mask mandate.
It's harder to find that.
Because you're on Google, bitch. Get on DuckDuckGo. You find it right away.
DuckDuckGo was on this
You want
weeks
me to
ago.
Google it on DuckDuckGo or DuckDuckGo it?
Well,
I'll
Jamie, you can't
DuckDuckGo it.
Google it on DuckDuckGo. You have to DuckDuckGo your way
He's
there.
so Googled. He's so corporate. I think Jamie's been secretly sponsored by Google.
You know
They don't let us
DuckDuckGo is
know.
also compromised.
Oh.
I'm just saying, I'm not the first person to
You're gonna throw that accusation. You're gonna besmirch the good name of DuckDuckGo right here.
Canadian provinces begin backing off vaccine mandates. Jamie.
Begin? What does that mean?
Alberta caves to trucker protest ends vaccine. Click on that one. Washington Times. Alberta caves to Canada trucker protest ends vaccine passports.
I would.
That's what I said.
I know. I'm just saying. I don't know what.
Get
the
off of
Washington,
Google.
The Washington
off of
Times.
Google,
I
bro.
don't know that's the #1 source of my first choice. Is all I'm
Is
saying.
CNN better?
I wouldn't have picked that either.
What is the Washington Times? Is that
Exactly.
even a real newspaper?
That's all my point was.
I mean, it sounds like a real one.
You know how I judge newspapers based on how much you're trying to sell me at the bottom? Like when it gets to the bottom, do you want to live forever?
Here,
like,
look. I look at the sponsored stories and look at the
Yeah,
sponsored
there they go.
stories.
Okay, look at the sponsored story. Never Trump. Jonah Goldberg picked up by CNN after resigning from Fox News.
No, it's Biden is a real SOB.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi says, so you look at the stories they're trying to push, and then you go, all right, what is the headline you're
But
pushing?
hold on, these are real stories. Nancy Pelosi's son allegedly tied to fraud and bribery scheme. I believe that.
Sounds legit.
Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez staying off Twitter due to backlash. Is she staying off Twitter? How the fuck do you know? How do you know? You have her phone? Fuck are you talking about? I know she's off Twitter because I got her phone. I'm so tired of talking about this. I'm so tired of talking about COVID. I'm so tired of talking about the pandemic. One of the things that I really loved about coming here to Texas is like they didn't treat it the same way in California. My friends in California are still living in hell.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are tired of all of this. You know, like you were saying before, when you're like if you're on social media, you have this perspective of the world.
Yeah.
And then like if you remove yourself from that, it's almost like you remind yourself that there's
a
still
regular world.
there's real life.
There's a real life.
You know, it's like
yeah.
you when you get on like, and a lot of people I think are really tired of the COVID regime. Like they just want to go back to normal life. A lot of people are really tired of the culture war bullshit because so much of it is manufactured, and they just want to go back to real life. You just don't see this as. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all. And I've noticed it in stand-up comedy that things have changed. Where, like, particularly in like liberal cities, there's certain things if you talk about trigger audience members more and things like that. But in general, in life,
houses.
you just kind of like you go, you could watch like social justice warrior type college campus activists online, the fat phobic person we were saying before, and they're all this like white privilege and this and that and all this. And you're like, oh my god, there's like all racism is everywhere. And then you like go to the supermarket where like,
Hey,
some black guy steps in front of you and he's like, oh, excuse me, and you're like, oh, you get stuff. And you're like, oh,
Can I get a pound of roast beef? Everybody's normal.
Everyone's
Where's the peaches?
Yeah, like everyone just. I used to use this example a lot as like what I just like said what the free market like does to people is that I was just because I'm Jewish and I lived in New York City that I'd be like I can literally like walk outside. This is before Uber. I used to say this all the time, but you can put your hand up and a yellow cab stops with a Muslim driving, and I'm a Jew. I just put my hand up and I get in, and he drives me to where I want to go, and then he goes, "Thank you, sir. God bless." And I go, "Thank you, sir. Have a good day." And that's just, and it's just because like, well, he wants some money and I want to ride, and we're all kind of working together, and we might have wildly different views, but we get past it.
I like talking to like a guy.
Enemy contact.
I like
We're
talking
okay,
to
but
a
that sun
guy
is going to
who,
bring more.
comes from Scotland. I like I want different people. It's fun. Because that's one of the beautiful things about New York City is that it's so filled with so many different folks, and everybody has to interact with each other. The thing about LA that fucks everybody up, one of the things, is that everyone's in their goddamn car. So you're in this isolated environment, and you go to where you're gonna go, and you don't ever just melt with everybody. In New York City, when you're on the street, man, everybody's walking. It's just filled with all kinds of people from all parts of the world.
It's a crazy thing, but it was a real interesting place to grow up. And I loved New York City. I hope it gets back to being kind of the vibrant city that it once was.
How is this Eric Adams guy
We
doing?
need you to stay close.
Terrible so far.
We're not moving
Real
without your
disappointment.
I
protection.
like the fact that he hired his brother. Yeah, a fat job.
Yeah, whatever. I think that's fine. That's
His brother's last job was parking cars for like $20 an hour. Now he makes $250,000 a year. What's up?
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Brother
He's
gave
taking
him
care
the
of his
hookup.
family.
I like that.
Now he doubled down on all of the COVID stuff right away.
Do you think that wasn't what his plan? Getting the hop on the road.
Somebody stop me!
I think he said things that were almost vague enough to not tell the voters who might not have liked that off. Well, I think that was one of the biggest blows for him because Brian risen quite a bit in New York, and this was coming off of New York. New York when I grew up, I was born in '83, so I grew up in New York in like the '80s and 90s, and New York crime was like a major problem. It got way better. Like my whole life, the crime was going down and down and down and down, and then all of a sudden it started coming back. People sort of very upset, so I think that was a big part of my appeal. It was the kind of like, we're going to take care of street crime, understandably, but I think it was very a bad sign to that immediately get hurt.
They're dropping the mask mandate, though. I think that's the new thing in New York City.
I saw that in New Jersey, they're saying they're going to drop the mask mandates for schools, which is really great news, and I think that's incredible, and it's one of those things that I know you just said you're tired of talking about it, but one of the worst things is
I'm exhausted.
masking up kids. I think it's just horrible.
It is horrible. I'm wondering what the world is like 2 years from now. I wonder what's going to change, whether or not we're going to get out of it. That's one of the things that does happen whenever human beings are confronted with any sort of adverse situation that requires like, there's a possibility and an opportunity for growth. And it's not completely outside the
Bring that bull down!
100%. I'm optimistic. I think that first off, I just think there's no option, so you might as well be optimistic. And I think that there is, even if, like, from my perspective, where I'm like, well, talking about
Road barriers. Raised to keep civilians from jamming the port. I'm okay. We can lower them.
But I
know
look
there's a
around at
control
this and I
panel
see the fact
nearby.
that I think the collapsing trust in all of these institutions is a
This will do
great
just
thing.
fine.
I think the fact that people are like waking up to this stuff is incredible.
It is because we have options.
Yes.
Because we have the Glenn Greenwald.
That doesn't sound right.
A car at the barrier.
Because they exist.
Slowing.
Yeah, and also just that I think that we can,
Expect the swarm.
we have the capabilities to have a more prosperous, a freer, a better, a kinder society than ever before. We just haven't put it all together yet, and that's what
We
we're
just
growing
gotta
progress.
shun the voices that disagree with us.
You don't stand a chance!
Well, be nice to each other.
What I hope people learn from everything over the say the last this is a big part of that politics
I'm out!
so poisonous. And this is one of the major problems with the COVID stuff in general, is that now politics
You are in my world now!
to go to work,
Firing the steam
to
boost!
visit your father, or whether you're allowed, everything was dictated by a government.
Next time, watch
Political
yourself.
differences are like wars. Even when they're only wars or cold wars, it's like it's a war. When you have a political difference with somebody,
Reload!
you're now fighting over who is going to rule over the other person. Like, this is why once every 4 years, tensions rise so high
By the
over,
numbers,
is it going to be Hillary
we should
or
all be
Trump?
dead.
Biden or Trump? Because one of you is going to lose.
I hope we get the Kamchatka before they do.
Ruled over by the other one.
Do you remember when Biden won and then they started putting
I see a banner!
legitimate politicians that feel higher risk?
Like,
Saying.
and it's at the biggest effect. I was at this summer. Okay, not the strong point for food, but it was some real great people there, and South Dakota also, by the way. Yeah, for the
South Dakota thrive, right?
Yeah, the only state in the
Firing!
union
Steam
that never
boost!
had a lockdown for 1 day, never had a mask mandate, never had any mandate. Like,
Somebody stop me!
no. 50 mil. Clearing through Anyway, so I was talking there to the crowd about like this stuff, like the idea of like political differences versus differences.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, like if you were in the crowd somewhere here, there is like there's a Christian sitting next to an atheist.
We'll head to the western gate.
Like, you know, it was like a big crowd, like there's like 1,000 people there. So it's like somewhere, this is true, in the crowd, there's a Christian sitting next to an atheist. You guys have the most profound differences in the way you view the world. I mean, like literally one of you believes the other one is gonna burn in a pit of fire for eternity. And the other one, you know, believes that you are delusional, basically, that you believe you have this personal relationship with something that doesn't exist. And you just sit next to each other,
Right.
and everything's fine. And like
Yeah.
maybe you'll have a beer later. No one cares. But we're going to war over whether you're a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
Like it's only when the differences are political that it's become this crazy culture war.
Because it interferes with your life. Like if this guy doesn't bake
Everybody's high, panic, bad combination.
But if they become political, let's say that your kids
Focus fire on the big one!
Go to public school is now going to teach Muslim prayer in the school. You go, well, wait a minute, I don't want my kids being indoctrinated with stuff I don't believe in. So my point is that when you reduce government, you know, when you reduce government intervention, when you reduce the size and scope of government, what you end up getting is more peace. You end up getting things where it's like people can have disagreements. We can have different cultural preferences. We can have different feelings about gender or whatever. You know, like you can have all COVID, whatever it is, and we don't have to go to war with each other. And I really do think that, like, I believe that in order for this country to survive and to thrive, we need liberty. That's like the answer. It's the answer to all of it. We need the government to stop doing all of the evil stuff that it's doing, and we need a spirit of liberty where it's like, look, we can disagree with each other and not have to go to war with each other.
But let me ask you this, like being a libertarian and reducing government is what you're really interested in. So if that's the case, what are the things that get drastically reduced? Like besides the obvious ones like military and what are the things that you feel there's egregious misspending or overspending?
Well, I mean, okay, so, right, I mean, I know you said besides that, but I'm still going to just number one is ending all of the wars. I mean, it's just been, it's been one disaster after another. Millions of innocent people have been killed in the wars in the last 20 years. There's nothing to show for it. Nothing. And so we should end every last one of them. And the biggest one right now is what's going on in Yemen. And there's talks that
You talking about Yemen again?
Yes.
But you were on CE Cup 5 years ago.
It's still, and literally, and no one listened to me then, and unfortunately, no one has yet. And now they're talking about escalating it, but it's the worst thing in the world. It's
What
the
is
biggest?
Explain what's going on.
So,
That's it. All clear.
All right. So basically, Obama started a war in Yemen. I mean, it was Obama's government working with the Saudis to launch a war against the Houthis in Yemen. And basically, the backstory to it is that Obama had really, the Saudis were pissed off at our government, and they're a big trading partner of ours. But number one, they were against the war in Iraq that George W. Bush started because they kind of were the only ones who saw obviously how this was going to go. And they were like, they're big enemy of the land. And we were like, well, if we overthrow the Sunni minority government in Iraq, obviously the Shiites are going to take power, and then Iran's going to have all of this influence in the region, so you're just empowering our worst enemy. So don't do it. But America wanted to do it, Israel wanted to do it, all of the neocons wanted to do it, and so the war ended up happening.
Big one is down, finally.
So the war happens went exactly that way. It was a big deal. And then Obama came in, and he,
Auto turret online!
also really pissed off the Saudis. So Obama said, you can Google this and you can find it. He said, in order to placate the Saudis, he supported their war against the Houthis in Yemen. So we got involved in a war, which has turned into a genocide to placate one of the most evil
The screamer is calling it more!
the Saudis. So Obama, that's what Obama, the man who won the Nobel Peace Prize, gave us. And shit, besides,
This will do just fine.
for funding bin Ladenite Islamists in Libya and Syria, committing literal treason.
Bring that bull down! The bull is dead!
Literally launched a war of genocide to placate the Saudis.
Is that really the only motivation for us getting involved?
coming in from the
I mean, yeah, they're basically that they're a big business partner of ours, and we were pissed off and we were worried about losing.
They should hold them back!
in this war, the United States' part is what?
So basically, well, okay, so really it's the Saudis and the UAE are really wanting this war. But it's all, I mean, the Saudis doing it with American weapons. For the first, like, several years of the war, we were literally refueling their fighter pilots as they were doing it. And they're conducting the war in the most brutal and ruthless way. I mean, they're bombing, like, they're bombing farms.
That's
and
more
they're
like
bombing, you know, and they put a full blockade around the country. So there was something at one point that was in the ballpark of 1 million cases of cholera. I'm not sure if they were actually all cholera or there was some other similar like infections that went, but it's been hundreds of thousands of
This
people
will do
died
just fine.
in this war. The UN said it was the #1 humanitarian crisis in the world, and these are infectious diseases that are targeted that disproportionately hit babies. I mean, there's babies dying. And Yemen, by the way, before all of this,
We cannot let them over the gate.
and they were put a full blockade around the country. And this has been going on forever. Obama started it. Trump continued it through his entire presidency. Funded the Saudis
Targets
even more than
advancing from
Obama
under
had.
the breach.
Gave them even more, weapons. And Biden said he was going to end it. He said he was going to end the war. And there were some people, I would say, Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul.
There's a hider up ahead.
This is a genocide at this point. And Biden said he was going to end it. And he didn't. He backed off of that money. And now because the Houthis launched a few attacks that hit the United
Cut them down!
The UAE. And so now we're talking about escalating.
Reload!
Anyway, so that's the biggest thing. So what government should stop doing, that's like the biggest one to me. It's like, you cut the military budget drastically. Stop fighting stupid wars. Anyway, on top of that,
Bring that screamer down!
we need to end all corporate.
Can we stop before you move on to that?
Sure.
So what the motivations of our getting
That's
involved
more
in
like
wars
it.
that Saudi Arabia
Enough!
is it negotiations in terms of like oil access, negotiations in terms of like control of the region?
Well,
is it like
This will do just fine.
compromises in terms of like
Reloading!
we want to do this, we want to do that, so we'll allow you to do this, you do that, and then we'll work together.
So there's several really big financial incentives.
They're climbing the gate!
Number one, Saudi Arabia
You are in my world
a
now!
lot of money for weapons. There's also
We should not let them over the gate.
it has been this agreement for a long time. The Saudi Arabia their oil is in US dollars and only trading dollars. And this does a lot to keep our currency afloat.
Going heavy!
It was part of the reason why wasn't that? Didn't that have something to do with them taking their money, like taking
Supposedly, Saddam Hussein had a plan to start trading oil. To be in on this. Gold standard.
Western
that
gates
we
are clear.
made this deal with
What are
Saudi
your
Arabia
orders?
instead of so they would only trade oil for dollars, which in some ways kind of replaced the gold standard. Like, look,
So-
they're not redeemable for gold anymore, but they are redeemable for oil, and so you got some commodities kind of behind the money, and that allows us to print.
So, yeah, we did that.
We want to, without suffering the consequences of it quite as drastically, because there's still some value to the money for other people. We can export our dollar around the world. I'm sure there's other motivations that I don't know about, that I don't know for sure what they are. But I do know that hundreds of thousands of innocent people are being slaughtered over these wars. So whatever exactly the motivation is, it ain't.
Yes, it does.
And it's also one more crazy.
Hold on. I'm putting my points in real quick.
We're fighting on the side of Al Qaeda.
Or putting some points in, shall I
Like
say.
Al Qaeda is fighting the Houthis. There's still a pretty sizable Al Qaeda presence in the Arabian Peninsula, and particularly in Yemen, and they're the enemies of the Houthis. We're fighting on the side of Saudi Arabia and Al Qaeda.
Or, well,
against the Houthis
sorry, I should
because they're on
specify
because
changing.
Iran kind of likes them. It's nuts. And we need to just stop doing it. And it's insane. While our country's falling apart,
I'm
we're
gonna do
still
that one
trying to like,
instead.
remake the world. It's just
Is the
it's
idea though
bananas.
that the reason why they're making these concessions to these other foreign countries is that ultimately it does help America in some sort of a way?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they would.
No,
Yeah,
I
we're
don't
talking
need
about
that.
like a-
Hold on, y'all. I'm about to click it. Hold on.
Involved in this sort of international
15 in a row.
politics,
Yes.
that could kind of explain.
That give
Not
me-
saying that you would agree with them, but explain to
Fuck, I'm gonna
you
put that.
the motivation or why it's beneficial to be involved with these companies.
Stimpack.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've heard,
We gotta stay above
several
50%
of
health.
them.
I don't
I've
think
heard a
that's
lot of
possible.
Arguments. By the way, there's also a lot of those guys who would agree with me on this, or I would agree with them. I should probably say more accurately. I mean, I'd highly recommend anybody who
Okay.
wants to know what's really going on to listen to Colonel Douglas McGregor,
Ready.
who is as smart and as decorated as you could possibly be, and he's the guy who really makes the argument the best that we should be completely out of all of these wars.
Is
and
he
that
retired?
Yeah, I believe he is
Kinda have
at this
to be
point.
to have
Yeah,
those
yeah,
kind
I
of
believe he is.
things, right?
But he was actually, I believe he was McMaster's boss at one point. But McMaster's, rose up. I guess the political stuff with it did a little bit better than him, and he ultimately became, the guy, and he didn't. But also might be because of what their views are on this stuff. But yeah, there are people who will make these arguments, but really, usually the arguments that they come down to like, well, I mean, it's like the way the wars were sold. It's like, well, we had to go into Iraq because of whatever, weapons of mass destruction, or we had to go into Syria because Assad was killing all of his own people, or we had to go into Libya because he was about to go genocidal, or we had to go into blah blah. Yemen, they don't really try to make this argument as much for. It's
you
just
don't
kind
hear
of like
about it. It's never discussed.
It's just there's no real strong defense.
And it's
of
been
it.
going on. So how many years now? It's like you were talking about
8
it.
years, 7 years maybe now. Yeah, and now they're talking about ramping it up after Biden promised to end it.
MBS purchased the most expensive painting of all time. Do you know about that?
No.
I just watched a documentary about it last night, actually. I just finished it last night. It is a crazy documentary. And I think it's called The Last Da Vinci. See if you can find that. But it's about this very controversial painting that I've been obsessed with.
Okay.
I'm obsessed with... I get obsessed with people that believe things that don't necessarily make sense. And I get obsessed with hustles.
All units, fall back to the back zone. Preparations for the ship departure nearing
Salvador
complete.
Monday.
Be advised, we have
And
reports of possible
There's these
breaches
people
along
that
the perimeter.
find sneakers in the artwork. And what they do
We
is
have
they
to
go
cut
through
through here.
collection.
We can still get on
and
that ship.
They, is
Take
that what it's
down
called?
anything that
What is
moves.
the name of it?
We can't have them
The
following
documentary?
us.
Is it The Last Da Vinci?
Quiet.
Right, but there's a documentary. Right. So this painting.
So what's a sleeper?
It's a painting that they look at, and they, like someone's auctioning it off for a relatively low amount of money. But it might be very valuable. They find these
This
occasionally.
looks
Like someone
loud.
found a drawing recently that someone bought at a yard sale. So it was worth millions. And I think they bought it for like $50. And then someone recognized the handiwork, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And they bought it. And it turned out to be this guy found it, and it's in this thing, in this, where they're looking at these paintings in the art collection, and he purchased it for like a little over $1,000, and he ships it to New York, and these art experts start going over it, and they think it's the lost Leonardo da Vinci. And so they have to, it's been overpainted, which means somebody painted over the original painting. So they have to strip it down. This is where it's squirrely. So go to the Salvador Mundi and then find what it looked like before restoration. Because this is what I didn't understand. This is wild. It was way worse than that.
The street
Because he
is blocked on
painted it.
both
Hold
sides.
on. He painted it on wood. Da Vinci would paint things on wood. And so he painted on wood, and there was a lot of evidence that he prepared. Like there were sketches, if you scroll back up, you can see that. These are sketches that he had drawn of like the way the cloth would fold on, because it's a painting of Jesus. It's the way the cloth would fold on Jesus' arm. So there's evidence that he was working on this painting. There's also copies of this painting, and one of them got displayed in the Louvre in Paris.
Take a look at this.
The MBS, the owner of this painting, wouldn't allow them to put it unless they put it right next to the Mona Lisa. He wanted them to call it the male Mona Lisa. See, that's a copy. But I wanted to see if you can find Google what the original image is after stripping away the overpaint. And it's so damaged. Like there's so much missing from the painting. So this painting, that's what we're talking. So this painting that's sold for some, like in the see in the bottom, that circle, that's actually a knot in the wood. And so a lot of the painting was missing. So the painting that's sold for $450 million, the most expensive painting ever, was painted over by a woman in New York City. The paint, that's what it looked like before she started restoring.
I see.
So she just filled in the gaps, basically.
She filled it in an amazing way. Like what she did's amazing. That's before cleaning. That's what it looks like. And these crazy cracks and
Using
gaps.
a stim
This
pistol.
woman worked at it for 5 years straight. All she did was paint this
Check
thing.
it out.
And at the end of it, like see those, like it shows you, scroll back up where you just were. Scroll back up, please. Right there. So that's what it looked like on the left, and that's what it looks like after her work. So all those white spots where the painting was missing, she did all that. All the shading had to be consistent with the time period,
Right.
and it had to look like a painting that was old. Like the hair, everything. Like look how much. They said some egregious amount. I think it's like 90% of the painting really painted contemporary.
Then she
I
just
did not
sold
know
it
they
as
did.
if
She
it
did
was
not sell.
supposed
She
to
did
work.
not sell. She was hired to restore. So she
We
was
gotta
a
move!
legitimate, bona fide art expert who was hired to restore the painting.
So she thought she was just doing a job.
She was doing a job.
Right.
But she also is convinced
Found a
that
heavy
this is a
weapon.
Leonardo da Vinci. However, other people
Moving to a bigger
who
drop the
are
ball.
art experts that have nothing to do with it say bull fucking shit. They call bullshit every step of the way. They mock it. They're like, this isn't a terrible painting. Like, no fucking way. But Sotheby's had this like amazing
Game over.
video.
I was like, I know so little about art that when you go like, oh, this is a Da Vinci. I don't really know.
The
Is it good? Is it not?
documentary-
You tell me.
Stim
The
boost.
documentary is incredible because the documentary is not just about the painting itself, but it's also about the psychology of selling. And one of the ways that this thing was selling,
Mowing them
why
down.
it became an issue, is because there was this French guy who was selling these paintings to Russian oligarchs. So this Russian guy was a billionaire, spending all this money on paintings, and he found out because of an article they got ripped off by the French guy. He thought that the painting cost $135 million. That's what he paid for it. But the French guy got it for $75
Using a
million.
stim pistol.
So this French guy was marking up all the paintings he sold to this guy by like as much as 100%. This guy got fucked. And so he realized this, by this, and then he made him auction off everything he ever bought from him. And so one of the things they did is they brought it to Sotheby's. And Sotheby's made this incredible promotion, this really elaborate promotion, selling this painting. And one of the ways they sold it was videotaping people's response, because people thought it was a Da Vinci. They videotaped people, including Leonardo DiCaprio. So Leonardo DiCaprio was in this video staring at this. So they took it from the perspective of people looking at the painting. People were crying and weeping, and this is part of what Sotheby's did to sell this. And then
That's
they
brilliant psychology.
Oh
yeah.
my God, it's amazing. And they put it on display, and no one knew who was buying it. It turned out to be MBS. He was buying it, and he has it in his. He has it in a yacht. That's where it's displayed, which cost the exact amount of his painting. The yacht is like $500 million too. And so he's got this painting that's probably not Leonardo da Vinci, but it's definitely, whatever it is, it's mostly painted by this lady.
Whatever it is the most overpriced piece of art ever.
Maybe.
Even if it is Da Vinci, it's half not him.
But
Best
if it
case
is,
scenario.
yes. See, the thing is, if it is Da Vinci, wouldn't you rather have the one that's not fucked with, that's just clean, that looks like shit? Like, rather than someone comes along and paints over it. Like, go back to the original one after cleaning. Like, so I'd rather have the
I need help. They're on me.
Just for Da Vinci.
yeah,
Because once someone else fills in the gap, it's no longer like his painting.
right. Like, this is the original. Like, if that was up there, like, yeah, man, if you go to Italy, and I've been to Italy many times, and one of the more amazing things about Italy is the art. There's incredible art all over the place, like so many different churches and so many, and a lot of it is really worn out and old. But through that, it's amazing because you get to look at this art that's been weathered by time. And
Yeah,
you
that's
get a
kind of
real,
part of the like appeal of it. Right.
like that by itself, right there.
good.
If they could actually attribute that to Da Vinci, that
Spread
should
out
be
and look
worth
for
way more
explosives.
than the lady painting over it. But I don't know if they knew the lady painted over it. This is the thing. It's not clear. When they show the painting and they say this is like a lost Leonardo and it goes for $450 million, I don't think they say, by the way, this is what it used to look like before this broad in New York City who really knows how to paint. And she's an amazing fucking artist. It's really crazy her perspective too. She's like, they're saying that I did this, but I could never have created this masterpiece. I'm like, ma'am, I kind of disagree. You're pretty fucking
I
incredible.
mean, if you could fill that in, I feel like you could just paint that.
I feel like she could paint it too. I mean, this idea
Kill the
that-
screamer!
I
Fast!
mean, maybe it's like a wine piece.
I see one of the loud ones!
It's the same kind of documentary. It's one of the reasons why I love it. It's a husk. Sour grapes. This is about this guy, this gentleman who is a wine expert, who was selling, he was
Stim boost.
buying at auction, very expensive
Hydra is
wine.
dead.
Like really old,
I see an
very
infector.
valuable, very rare wine.
Hundreds of years old.
Yes, some of it hundreds of years old, some of it just decades old. But the point is, like, he was selling this wine to all these wealthy buyers. So he would curate this collection of these incredible wines, and then he would sell them to people. Well, then someone figured out that some of the wines that he was selling were counterfeit. And then they started doing
Here
an
they
examination,
come!
and where he fucked up was he sold the wine to the Koch brothers. So one of the Koch brothers who bought like millions of dollars in wine for himself got fucked because one of the gentlemen who worked for the original company, the original vineyard, was like, we've never made a Magnum in that year. We didn't make it with that label. This is misspelled. This is incorrect. And then they start doing a deep dive. And they go to this guy's house. They fucking raid his house. Find it's got like labels. He's got like things that are, yeah, like this is stashes of old corks and labels were discovered. And how do you say his name? What is his full name? What is his So, what's really funny is my friend Matt is in this documentary, and I didn't know until I was watching. My friend Matt is a legitimate wine connoisseur, and Matt loves wine. Like, he has a giant warehouse in his
Rigging
like,
it up.
a wine room in his house filled with wine. And
Is
one of
everybody
his
okay?
birthday parties, I went to his birthday party, and on his birthday party, it was all of his wine friends. They had a wine tasting. So we went to this amazing restaurant, and they would bring over a small plate of food, and then
I see a big
they
one!
would all taste it. They would all swirl it around, and like
Finally dropped the bull!
the wine was incredible. And that guy was and I recognized him. So this guy went to jail for this for a long fucking time. Like, he went to like a serious
up
fucking prison
explosives.
in Colorado.
Well, it's fraud, right?
Oh yeah, he stole. Like, they don't even know how many bottles of this fake shit are out there circulating. They don't know how many people were involved with him.
Don't rip off billionaires, man. They got
Exactly.
a lot of resources to spend if they figure out you did that.
They certainly did, but the point is, it's the same thing. It's like people that want to have this very exclusive, very rare thing, and so like they get romanced by the auction, by the idea that they're going to be the one that has it. You know, oh, Ed's got it in his basement. you
So
know?
that's what's so interesting about it is that
Breathe
they're
it.
such weird
Explosives.
animals.
That's
It's like the
Somebody take out the loud one.
appeal of something. Because the truth is that you could just look, you could get someone who's a good artist into a picture that's real nice that you like looking at. You could get a
Using a
good
stim
bottle of wine
pistol.
that you enjoy drinking.
Yeah.
But you are so
Charges in
interested
position.
in having this thing that confers with it like status or something like that.
Got
with
a
it. Like, I don't know
charge.
exactly
Rigging it
what
up.
it is, but there's something that you get off on. Like, I've got the thing. That's very interesting. It's
Reloading.
and then if you have that mentality and you find out that you've been ripped off,
Oh my God.
furious you must be.
Especially if you're a billionaire and you fancy yourself to be an intelligent person who's an expert in this one thing that you're obsessed with, which is wine. And they show this Koch brother going through his basement or his what would you call it, his wine cellar, and it's incredible. His collection, his massive collection, all these wines. He's so proud of it, and then it turns out it's bullshit.
And then
It's
he
like
finds
some
out and he's like,
asshole in a
and
fucking.
he's furious,
Yeah.
and he's like, well, I have $40 billion to spend. I'm getting even with you, sir. So, also,
The other part's clear.
up there with the worst billionaires with this up, because they're also like, detectives. They're like, well, let me just call the DA, who is my good friend, and the senator, who I funded.
In this documentary, what's really interesting is this one guy. You know, the thing about wine is like, I don't know how many real experts there are and how many people are just pretending
Hey,
they
Hiroshi!
can taste the difference in these wines. 'Cause
I
they
feel like
take
I
the
could
wine-
fake it.
they-
No, I don't.
They swirl it around, they put it in their mouth, and a lot of times when they taste it, they have a bucket and they spit into the bucket. They just swirl it around their mouth and they spit it out. It's wild. They tasted it, they drank it all, they began it. So to avoid being hammered, they spit it out. So they put it in their mouth, they get the flavor of the wine, and they spit it into like a bucket. It's wild shit. So in one scene, there's this one guy who's like a pseudo expert, right? I don't know if he's an expert, and he's like, this is one of the wines that Rudy sold me that's real, and you can taste it. It's absolutely real. It's got hints of oak and citrus and whatever. And then another guy tastes it. He smells it. He goes, how long ago did you open this? And he goes, like 2 hours ago. Something like this. This is bullshit. He goes, this is fake. This is flat. Doesn't have nearly the complexity of the Chavez Wajwul or whatever the fuck it is. I've had Chavez Wajwul before, and it's so much richer and denser. This is skunk taste. And he's like, what? And you see the other guy who's like, not between them and a ship or something. Doesn't really know. This guy's like a real wine expert. He's like a pseudo wine expert. Oh, he seems confronted, like his ego shattered.
Breaching charge coming down.
About this thing, it's like, boy, have you guys missed the mark. Wine's supposed to fucking taste good. It's supposed to be, that's how it's supposed to be. This is a good tasting wine. You'll have a nice conversation.
Too close. Way too close.
You're missing the
Yeah,
mark.
like you've taken a thing that's supposed to be a
This
drink
looks
that
loud.
you enjoy that makes you feel good.
What did I get?
And put all of this like just psychological like importance on top of it to create this entire structure that is absurd. Like just
Okay,
makes
I'm
no
good.
sense.
Have you ever had a really expensive bottle of wine?
I really don't like wine. I never liked wine.
I love red wine. I was in Florida once. and
Loading
me and my
fresh
friend Mark
ammo.
Delagrate. Shout out to my homie Mark. We were eating at a restaurant with a bunch of UFC employees, and Mark and I like a red wine, and we were going through the menu. What do you have? What are you gonna do? You want to get some wine? And he goes, yeah. I go, let's get a good bottle of wine. And so they brought over Syrah. And I go, you know what? I've never had like a real good bottle of wine. Like, what's a real good bottle of wine? It's like, well, how much do you want to spend? And so he goes through his list, and he bought about $1,200. Wow. Fuck. Like, let's see. Big one is down. Good, man. It's kind of like weak. It sounded like it was like almost watered down. It was like wiggery or something, or maybe it was like too old. It was like from 1972.
Dude, you got fucking rooted.
But here's the thing.
They gave you
There was
some
quite a few of us.
$6 wine.
There was like
It has been an
10
honor to
staff
serve
that
with
we were
all of
all
you.
going to dinner, all the production staff. And then after we had that bottle of wine, it was 2018 bottle instead of a regular bottle. It was way better. It It was way better. I enjoyed it more. It was like $40. I'm like, this is a better bottle of wine. Like, this is so crazy that like this $1,200 bottle. What is it? What are you looking for? Like, what is it about it?
Stim
That's
boost.
what I'm obsessed with. That's what I'm obsessed with about the Salvador Mundi. That's what I'm obsessed with the Sour Grapes documentary. I'm obsessed with this obsession that people have with like very subtle differences and things that only someone who's like deeply studied can understand.
But it's also, I mean, I feel like what's interesting to me is the psychological factor, and I think it's got to be at least a lot with the status.
Oh,
That people are just like, look, this is what lets you know that I'm up here, and we're hardwired to really care about status. Like that's just the thing, because that's what it is. Yeah, well, you just went from being high and
Loading fresh ammo.
to being exposed. Like you're more like
Not today.
taken down.
Friendly fire. Load to aim.
We get upset.
Focus fire on
Well,
the
it's
big
also one
one.
of the reasons why it's what fucking really holds back. I mean, I'm sure in some ways it propels human advancement, you know. Otherwise we probably wouldn't have it. But it also, it's like what holds back a lot of these things. People admit when you're wrong,
Reloading.
and they'd rather just double down. Because it's a very difficult thing to do. To admit, you know, you've been wrong, especially about something major. You know, I mean, in the political world, I see this all the time. And even when people say they're wrong about stuff, they tend to try and like, well, we don't really believe that anymore. But here's why we're pissed off at this guy now, and you're like, okay, spend some time on this. Like I do. By the way, that I mean, shoot, for a second, everything. That is one of my people with all the right wingers. You now kind of commit porn to that in the United States. They don't really spend a lot of time on that. You know, it's just kind of like, yeah, I guess we're
Well, back in the time, the day after 9/11, the mentality was obviously we got attacked. This was horrible. We have to make sure this doesn't happen again. The way to do this is to be proactive. Because the time has come where we need to act.
On the left.
Sitting back,
Parking garage.
obviously this is not a good strategy. This is responsibility.
Yeah, that's like I think that's understanding of what America got wrong after 9/11. Is that we accept? This is why Ron Paul to me is the greatest thing in America.
All that practice paid off.
And we built up so much anger over there that people were willing to be recruited to come be suicide bombers just to get us back. And that was the huge mistake. And so if he's right about that, which I believe he is, then the response of like,
From the
"Yes,
fuel
now we
depot."
really need to do something, the worst possible response. And I think we fell right into what Bin Laden's trap was, which was like Bin Laden was set.
The ship is clear.
Bring down the United States of America. He thought that he could lure us into wars that would bankrupt our country, the United States of America. And so that was kind of the whole plan.
Loading fresh ammo.
Happened with Bin Laden. It's very strange that they never showed his body. And it's very strange that, like I remember, you know, there's one Navy SEAL that's or
Come
at
on,
least
we
if
made
not
it.
credited,
We're
he's
clear.
publicly stated.
Ship
is
has
the man
reached
who shot Bin
minimum
Laden
safe
and so
distance.
forth. A lot
Light them
of
up.
people either disagree with him, or his choice to go public.
Let's go.
Met that guy before, but I don't know. It certainly seemed really shady.
That's the first time I think I might have beat that. I could be wrong, or maybe I just zipped through
Just for
the
political
movies.
reasons, just for like to bring closure to the American people, you'd want to like demonstrate in
And they
some
got
way.
rid of his body at sea, right? Which is wild too. That's
And they had some excuse that didn't really make sense over that.
what
But
was the excuse? Did it have to do
something
with
like
religion.
yeah, we had to do it consistent with like a Muslim burial or
Really?
something like that. Yeah, which it's just none of it really added up. But anyway, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do tend to think that, you know, I think Bin Laden's dead and he was once alive. I don't know exactly what happened there. But to me, the bigger thing that's just like so crazy is that, so we got him in, 2012, and here we are in 2022. We just ended the war in Afghanistan, a few months ago. And then we still have wars going on all throughout the Middle East that no one really seems to care about anymore.
Isn't Bin Laden's son an artist or something?
I think one of them was. Yeah. He's got a very, his whole family was a very rich, connected Saudi family. A lot of them weren't like with his terrorist thing either. Like he was a kind of like,
you gotta think
that's crazy Uncle Osama.
Well, his terrorist thing was fueled by the fact that the United States funded the Mujahideen to fight off the Soviets.
Well, right, so there were several kind of like layers to it. Is like that number one, right? So in 1979 to 1980, we funded the Mujahideen, which was his group, and funded, armed, and trained them on how to lure a superpower into an unwinnable war and beat them through guerrilla warfare to bankrupt their country. I mean, that one kind of came back to bite us. But then ultimately what happened is that we used these guys, and then we ultimately radicalized them against us. And so the Americans basically propped up the governments in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia. And these were the governments that they were really like opposed to. And particularly, it was the George H.W. Bush's war in Iraq. So if you guys, do you remember the not as popular war in Iraq that everyone said was just a cakewalk? Like that it was like, oh, we won that easy. Yeah. And they were celebrating it, and they were doing these specials on TVs, and this just showed how great it was that America can go to war now. It's like the Soviet Union collapsed, we're the superpower in the world, and look how easy war is. Yeah. We can just go right in there, topple these countries, and win. We don't even have to take the guy out of power. Easy peasy. Except 30 years more of war with that country. And one of the little side effects of that war was that it really pissed off Osama bin Laden. And we put these bases in Saudi Arabia to launch the war, in Iraq. And that really pissed off the bin Ladenites, because this is like, their holy land. And now there's this foreign military with bases in their land.
Bye-bye.
This was infuriating to them.
Whoever the hell you is, have a good day.
The blockade against Iraq, the sanctions, and the continued bombing campaigns by Clinton, where like hundreds of thousands of people died. They were
watch us go ham sandwich with the cheese.
So much like provocative.
Hey,
have you ever seen that?
Watch your bitch down on her knees. Face down, that ass up. I'm pimping. You know what's up.
Dying in Iraq.
Sitting in the cup, roll a blunt, then fuck your slut. Hey.
500,000 children dead in Iraq. Just to keep this in mind, they're not talking about.
Hey, pimpin', bro. What are you talking, bro? Me and my cat are judging you. How you feeling?
I'm talking about Bill Clinton's sanctions on Iraq.
Me and my cat is judging you.
In between those two wars. And this is the type of stuff that really. I'm not saying, I know there's people out there who will argue it's like, no, it's because they're crazy terrorists and it's all of this. I'm saying this is the type of stuff that turned young, angry Muslim people to be willing to join up with Osama bin Laden's cause. And you have it.
Protest.
They're just like YouTube. YouTube it. Madeleine Albright, 500,000 kids. It should come up quick. It's like pretty famous fucking thing. But that's it. So the second one right there. Oh. All right. But yeah, it's just a pretty crazy little moment of what the mentality was for.
We have heard that half a million children have died.
Return to your cabins immediately.
That's more children
Lock your
than died
doors and remain inside until you're clear to leave. All
is
military
the price
personnel,
worth it?
report to Cargo Bay 1.
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
So that's 500,000 children starving to death is just an acceptable price.
Looks like somebody got through.
Keep our foreign policy going.
Crazy statement, but it's also a crazy question. Is the price worth it? Like that's not, nobody wanted 500,000 kids to die, right? So saying is the price worth it, like, and then asking her, and then she has to answer.
Yeah.
All of it's nuts.
Well, yes, I agree with you, but it's like,
They're here.
and by the way, there's also, I've heard people who dispute the number. It was like a UN study that found that it might have been like, maybe it was 500,000, it might have only been a couple thousand children, a couple 100,000 children, but this type of shit is this is what bin Laden, wrote about. basically, the
Eyes
plan
peeled.
was that,
There's a hider.
We prop up brutal dictators in the Muslim world. We prop up Israel, who's oppressing the Palestinians.
Don't come out
and
of your
that our
cabins.
military interventions in Iraq and other Muslim countries have killed a whole bunch of innocent people. And this was the shtick he used to recruit people. Whether he believed it or not, I don't know, but this is what he used to recruit people. And so the lesson, of 9/11 should have been that if you do these things in the Middle East, if you have these military interventions, if you kill all these people, if you have your Secretary of State on television saying the price of 500,000 dead children over there is worth it, there is a cost to that. And in this case, the cost turned out to be 9/11. And the cost turned out to be that people, people are going to hate you so much that they're willing to try to come kill people over here. And in response to that, we decided, well, the lesson is that we got to go fight more wars over there. And it's been 20 years of fighting wars since then, 21 years of fighting wars since then. And there's only more Bin Laden terrorists than there were before. And trillions of dollars and, millions of lives. I mean, millions.
I agree. Not disputing. Is there any argument that people make that is even remotely compelling that
Rescue
if we
leader,
didn't do
report.
that, there would have been a superpower that is run by a brutal dictator that would have had substantially more control and more ability to enforce their regime throughout the world?
I haven't heard anyone make that argument. I think it's almost impossible for anyone to argue that, as bad as they were, that Saddam Hussein still being here, Gaddafi still being here, would not be a better situation than what we've had. Can I say this, just to answer that question, because I think this is very relevant to what you're asking? So, Bill Kristol, do you know who he is? Right, so he was the editor for Weekly Standard for a long. In many ways, he was the leading intellectual neocon. So the Cheneyite kind of intellectual who was all about all of these wars. So he had a debate, an Oxford-style debate at the Soho Forum, which is a debate thing in New York City, run by Gene Epstein, who's a brilliant economist. He puts together these debates. He debated Scott Wood, the guy I was just telling you about, who's my guy on foreign policy. It's really great. I highly recommend people check it out. It's on YouTube. And so there's Bill Kristol, and they're debating about regime change wars and whether they're good for America or not. And one person asked Bill Kristol, and this is Bill Kristol. He is the, Bush, Cheney. We have to go fight all this war on terror. The biggest cheerleader of all of them. And they asked him, what can you look at to one intervention, one military intervention that was successful? What is one military intervention that you could look at and say this was a success? And he said the Balkans.
Stim boost.
Which I don't agree with, but leaving that aside,
Kill the screamer!
he would not even try to point to one. He would not even try to say Iraq or Afghanistan or Somalia or Libya.
Finally dropped the ball.
He was not even dare, because no one could not possibly come up with to say that this would have been worse.
What do these guys say
Here they come!
when they say what we would have done differently to be successful?
I got a breach in charge.
We would have mitigated all these lives of innocent civilians.
Well, there will be some people who, some of those right-wing talk types who would have, at the time at least, blamed Obama for not being cautious enough. He shouldn't have drawn down. He should have surged more. Yeah. And if only that, we could have won it. The problem with that is that sending like 7,000 troops to Afghanistan. We had a very small footprint in Afghanistan beforehand, right? and there wasn't that much violence. And so then a lot of people tend to have this attitude of like, well, then why did we pull them out? We could have just kept them in. But that's not exactly true. The thing is that we had a deal with the Taliban that we were leaving. And the deal was kind of a ceasefire until we leave. But we're leaving. And the Taliban was keeping that deal. But if we... Now, Joe Biden came in, the deal was we leave in May. And he pushed it back to September. And the Taliban was going, all right.
All that practice paid off.
But if we left, there's no guarantee at all that they would have kept that ceasefire. They might have
Using a stim pistol.
war, in which case we would have needed a hell of a lot more than 10,000 people there to do it. So I really don't think there was any way to do this. The best way to do it would have been to not fight the war with Turkey. We never needed to go to war. I mean, even if we wanted to go to war to take out Al-Qaeda, we did that very quickly after 9/11. And they had Bin Laden at one point. And a whole bunch of the military for backup. And they didn't give it to them. They let them stay in Pakistan. And then decided the mission was regime change. Never. Stupid things again. But I don't think it's so evident that, and I think Biden, don't give him credit for a lot of things, but I think he was right about that. He realized that he was going to be caught between two decisions. It was either to pull out or serve. I don't think there was an option to just keep the troop levels there. And I think that's double.
Have you seen the latest Kyle Biden?
No, I don't think I have.
Kyle Dunnigan and Kurt Metzger created a new Biden. They got it so down.
We'll be there.
His Biden is fucking amazing.
That's excellent.
It's so good. It's so good. But here, play it. It's on the Instagram. I put it on my Instagram too. It's so fucking good. Here it is.
Stay very quiet.
Is there anywhere it hasn't spread?
It's nearly impossible to contain a virus on a cruise ship.
Using a stim pistol. Keep the lights down.
That's why that's Congress for full scale.
Those rusty countries. Reaching charge, counting down. Take them out! If it shoots, I'll take it. Stim boost.
Man, you say it 3 times fast, pal. You say it.
God damn, that is perfect.
It's so good, but it's so crazy that like he did that with Obama. People go, what?
Somebody take out the loud one!
And you do that with Biden and Steve go, oh god.
Using a stim pistol.
There's so many times when he just says a non-word.
What's attacking on us?
And you're like, what? How did you just do that? You didn't even brace yourself? You plowed into this non-word and said,
It's unbelievable. It's like a real emperor has no clothes
They
type
stopped
situation,
it.
where it's like even like the like most people in the corporate press, like Fox News aside, but like CNN, even New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC types, they hated Trump so much, and I understand why they hated Trump. You know, they wanted him out, thought it was an embarrassment, pissed them off. So they're like they went in with Biden, but now they're in this position where they have to pretend that they don't see what we all see. Like you just have to pretend. You're not seeing the like you're like, oh, this is totally confident leader. He's got too young. I'd say too young for that, probably.
I wouldn't say that, but
No,
they
they have to pretend that you don't see a guy who's clearly too old.
Rescue
who's
leader,
really
we are
lost
heading
his
to the
step, is, like,
atrium.
completely out of it, and it's I gotta say I enjoy it, and I like him being the face.
I won't forget what you did.
It's gonna be.
Thank you.
He's a year and he's aged 40 years.
Stim boost.
In a year.
I mean,
We're all
if you just
good.
go
Let's
look
keep
at the
moving.
speech, I think Joe Biden was, I think he always thought he was smarter than he was.
Using a stim
even
pistol.
back in the day.
They're
But
coming
if
in
you
from
listen
everywhere.
to a clip of Joe Biden 5 years ago, 7 years ago, listen to the way he talked, he is clearly lost a couple steps since then, and not even before he got into the White House. Like he was, and now since being in, it's bad. Yeah, I don't know how this whole thing's going well.
It's not going to go with him. He's not going to unless they fucking have that dude in a hyperbaric chamber every day for 90 minutes and fill him up with steroids and antioxidants.
And then they got Kamala Harris, who almost will have to be their next.
I don't think so.
Well, the problem they're going to have is, like, I understand when you say you don't think so.
We gotta
move! People don't like her. She's not critical. But the problem is, the Democrats kind of woke establishment. How can they really argue that the vice president, who just so happens to be a woman of color, that she should be skipped over?
She has the lowest approval ratings.
Well, why do you think that is, Joe? Because we live in the I'm saying she can make this
One of
argument.
them is hiding.
Not her. The problem is she's so bad.
She really is.
She's the worst. You know,
Careful. There's one. I need help.
what you're only doing.
Lurker neutralized!
Too close. Way too close.
We've always been doing.
What? She's incredibly bad at this. She's incredibly bad.
She's so bad.
And, but the problem is, if they do go with her, I mean, man, is she beatable.
She's not. They're not going to go.
Take a look at
They
this.
make it past the primaries with Tulsi Gabbard. Remember that? Tulsi Gabbard
Glorious.
her.
Yeah, it was
Knew
great.
her.
It was glorious.
She didn't have a goddamn thing to say because it was all true. Everything she said was accurate.
And it was a great thing that she took her out on. Like, it's like this idea that I think one of the things that is the most infuriating to regular people is that it's like and this is one of the things through COVID that's been infuriating to people. You see these videos of the other day, Stacey Abrams in a classroom.
Isn't that
all the
crazy?
kids have masks on, but you don't. So you're
obese.
fine, right? And you're fine imposing these draconian rules on everybody else, knowing that you're gonna live above them. You know, and in Kamala Harris's case, it was the most despicable hypocrisy that you yourself laugh about how you smoke weed, and yet you, as a prosecutor, threw other human beings in cages for lengthy prison sentences for the same thing that you laugh about when admitting you do it.
Yeah.
Like how despicable. It's just, yeah.
And then when Stacey Abrams got confronted about that photo, she cried racism.
Yeah, but this is that discussion my opposition is, that they would use this event on Black History Month.
Oh
It's like,
my God. So
but
crazy.
isn't it? It's one of the things I hate the most about COVID, or I shouldn't say hate the most, but one of the things that makes me real uncomfortable. I notice this even here today, like in my in the hotel that I'm staying at. It's like it's here in Texas, so like most people aren't wearing masks. Like I'm not wearing a mask in the
How
hotel,
doesn't
but they don't
matter
say
right
anything
now.
about it. There's no mandate, and so, now the staff is, which is a little weird. And some people there are. It's like fine if you want to go ahead, but most people aren't. It's like you see like the maids coming and they're all masked up, and like I'm not, and they like come in to clean your room and they have to wear a mask. And I just hate this like feel like there's already this thing where it's kind of like, hey, like you're cleaning my room for me, and like it's already a little bit of a weird feeling. Like I'm just relaxing and you're cleaning everything up, and then you have. I've been at clubs like around the country where like the bus boys have masks on, and you're in this environment, and you're on stage, you're having a lot of fun, you're telling jokes, everyone's in the audience, they're having a lot of fun, they're drinking, they're rapping, everyone's having fun. The one person here is working, and doing, you know, kind of, this isn't really fun, I'm fucking tables.
The big one's gone.
I guess it's not nasty. You just like let him, when he's being told, it's much worse.
One of us needs help!
Is everybody okay?
All the participants are maskless and all the staff have masks on. They're standing there with their hands behind their back,
Like your servant class,
Yeah.
but they can't even breathe
Loud
out of
mouth
their
down.
mouth and nose.
Yeah. It's fucking weird, man. It's weird. I was watching
This
Bellator,
looks loud.
and the Bellator fighters, I don't know what's the
Get eyes on the reaper.
they got out of the cage. So here they are,
Game over.
having fucking wars in the
I see hiding.
They get up and have this fucking cloth map, and they're waiting for them to catch the ball. As soon as they get to
MMA, it's like you're like the guys like when you're guard.
Pick me up quick, pick me up quick, pick me up.
Leading directly into your face, but then when you leave, you're like,
Fuck.
get a cloth mask. You really got it.
that map,
Kill me.
we walk outside this Israel.
That's an incredible.
Stomp
fight.
me out,
Fight.
sir.
At 185, that's the fight. Bobby Knuckles versus the King.
Can Whitaker close the gap? I mean, what happened that first time and now? I mean, he's really, really tough, talented fighter. But goddamn, Izzy really starched him that first time.
Stylebender is so good. His striking is so elite. The problem with
20 seconds.
what everybody does,
17.
is, I mean, we've seen the Paulo Costa fight. For Paulo Costa, I mean, you're talking about a guy who walked down the over.
Y'all gotta go back and pick somebody up.
He just puts it on people. He comes forward like this juggernaut.
Or maybe not.
Picked it apart, found those openings, just kept chopping at him, and then you see like the look on his face, like towards the end of the first round, he's realizing, fuck, I can't even touch this guy. I'm getting lit up.
Like he was trying to walk him down, and then Alexander's footwork so good that he just like couldn't like walk him down. He keeps like stepping off the side and hitting him with different shots, and then he's hitting him with his legs, and then you kind of see it starting to settle in where it's like, oh, now his leg's really compromised, so now he really can't walk him down because he's just dancing around him, and now he's and then he's like looking low and coming with high kicks and stuff. And
Found the door charge.
yeah, like you just see it start to settle into his mind that like it's like you're in quicksand, falling deeper and deeper into it. You're like, I'm fucked, and then more fucked and more fucked. And
The people who
then he's
really
gonna
appreciate
on
stuff.
top of you
Oh
too.
my God,
That
that
sucks.
Once they stop and help you. The people who really appreciate Stylebender should talk to like really high level Muay Thai people. Really high level strikers. They're the ones who are like, dude, what he's doing is art. It's art. Like the first fight with Whitaker, like towards the end of the first round, he had him fucked. And then when he KOs him, he's like leaning back, avoiding a shot.
Yeah, no, it's pretty.
So good.
Reloading.
So good, but I want to see like what adjustments.
Stim boost.
I mean, obviously, I think he's had at least 3 victories. Well, probably would agree.
Well, he beat Cannoneer, he beat Gaslam, and I think there was another one in there.
I think they were all decisions.
They were pretty one-sided
Super
decisions.
tough guys.
And very tough guys and very dominant performances.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, remember, Gaslam had a war with Stylebender.
Time for a big match.
Yeah, that's right. The other one was another big one. Yeah.
So those are 3 like
Found
elite
a heavy
fighters,
weapon.
3 very good strikers.
And I believe he had takedowns in all of those fights, which was not typically the way he had fought. I mean, like, I'm sure he's always had some wrestling. He wasn't really using his wrestling. I don't think any fight before that. He was always just knocking guys out. So it's kind of as an interesting
Here they come!
that he's now been like using his offensive wrestling a little bit more because for the Israel Adesanya fight, whether or not he can take him down,
This
I
looks
think
loud.
he really needs to at least make Israel Adesanya think that he might be trying to take him down.
Well, Marlon Vittori got him down a little bit in the first round, but then Israel put a stop to all that shit.
Yeah.
And he fucked him up, and Vittori's another one. Vittori's a fucking gorilla. That is a big guy. When I stand next to Vittori, I can't imagine how he makes 185 pounds.
Yeah.
And when he's so big, he looks like a heavyweight.
And
Or at least
Whitaker
a
is
light
not.
heavyweight.
Whitaker is not that type of
No,
big.
he's
Like,
not that type of
not,
big.
yeah.
But Jan Blachowicz, on the other hand, is a really big guy, and he was able to control Israel, take him down, and really the ground game was where he
Found a
scored
defense
the
kit.
probably the most points and had the most dominance
Stim
in
boost.
that fight with Adesanya. So like a lot of people look at that performance and say, well, if Jan could do it, maybe this is the way that someone can do it.
You're in my
I
world
don't
now!
think Whitaker is obviously not as big and as strong, but what he could maybe do is, I think, at least if he can land a takedown or 2, and at least be able to mix up the threat of a takedown with his very good strike. It's probably not as good as, Israel Adesanya's strike, but still very good. You don't want to get hit by that dude. Maybe that's his way to have a shot. I wouldn't bet on Whitaker in this fight, but I do. I'm interested to see it. Yeah.
It's very interesting because Whitaker is so smart and he's really young still. I think Whitaker just turned 30.
Someone patch me up!
I feel like he's 30. I feel like he's a couple years.
That sounds about right.
he's
Not
just turned
today.
31, and Israel's 34.
I'm through!
So this is
Mowing them down! Using a stim pistol.
If you can just go through the ranks, get enough wins, where now he justifies like a title shot. But if he does,
Reloading!
that would set up like
Watch your fire!
set up after this fight. If Pereira gets one big victory, I mean, think about Yuri Prohaska, right? Yuri's going to fight for the light heavyweight title. Yuri starches Volkan Ozdemir, and then he starches Dominic Reyes, and they're like, get him in there.
that's enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's the same with Pereira. I mean, Pereira, the first guy he beat was, not an elite fighter or a top contender. He was a very good fighter, but he knocked that guy out with that flying.
Auto turret set.
Yes.
Right? But he got taken down and held down for a little while. Then they reset in round 2, knocked him out.
Moving
So
to
it
a
still
bigger
leaves you
gun.
with this question in your mind of like, obviously we know the guy's striking this is insane. He's knocking out if a guy at this level already
Stim
held
boost.
down, what if Derek runs
Mowing them down! I need help! They're on me!
That's a big fight too. So whoever wins that fight, if Brunson wins that fight, because Big Brunson is a very good wrestler, then you see
Using a stim pistol.
Pereira. That actually Brunson can sign up for that.
Here it comes!
Or if you don't want to do that, if Brunson's so high, he probably wants a title shot. Or he wants to fight Sean Strickland and then winner gets a title shot or something like that. But maybe they're not going to do it that way. They're going to build this story and more likely to strike with them. I mean, Sean Strickland might grapple with him. I mean, Sean Strickland's boxing is excellent, but I don't know if you're Sean Strickland and you're fighting that fight. If you were in Sean Strickland's corner, wouldn't you be like, maybe try to take this guy down?
Strickland's an unusual character.
We
because
gotta
Strickland
move!
stands so strong.
His boxing's very good. There, that jab is incredible.
The ability to understand distance is so good. And they attribute that to all the rounds that he spars. He apparently spars a lot. He just gets to the gym and goes to war with everybody. He's got a shitload of rounds. And because of all that sparring, he has this amazing sense of timing and distance. And that guy, Jack O'Malley,
Moving to a bigger gun!
he's very good. And he had no chance of he just never came close.
Imagine an excellent fighter, but whoever the judge is who gave that fight should not judge fight. I mean, that's
All that practice paid off!
how you give him the look at that fight. Take me through it. Explain to me which 3 rounds.
I don't know who the judge was. We didn't even have to call that person out, but whoever it was. Stop. You don't know what you're doing. Not only that, this isn't even a complicated fight to judge, right? This is not like a jiu-jitsu match where, look at the guy, takes the guy down, and it turns into more of a jiu-jitsu type situation where he comes really close to finishing with a triangle, really close to finishing with an armbar, but he gets out of it, and he hits him with a punch.
Let's go, Team Rocket. That shit went hard.
Various factions of the jiu-jitsu guys or other people say, hey, he didn't submit it, so it didn't count. He didn't take any damage. I see those 2 different arguments, but in this case, it's a stand-up.
Or even in a stand-up fight, like, let's say, Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, where you had this round in the second round where Conor McGregor drops Nate Diaz a couple times, but he drops him with 1 punch. Nate falls to his guard, and he's like, come on in, and he backs up. And then at the end of the round, Nate Diaz puts him against the cage and just unloads with these combinations, hits him with a ton. Now, what do you value more?
Right.
There's a debate there. This isn't boxing.
Yes.
This isn't like an automatic, I have to score it because you drop down. He's telling you, come down with me, and you're backing off. And then he hits. But this wasn't even anything like that. They're just standing. One guy's trying to take the other guy down and can't, and he's getting punched in the head more than he's punching this guy in the head.
Clearly, his whole face was swollen up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really bad decision. And the fact that it was a split decision, I see that it's heartbreaking. That drives me crazy because if you don't know the way it works, folks that are listening, when the way the UFC's pay structure works, say if you're Sean Strickland, you know, I don't know what he got per that fight. Let's say he gets $250,000.
Sorry, I had to get to me some alcohol.
$250,000 to win. Like he might get an additional.
Had to get to me a
drink.
drink
His paycheck is to
or
win.
Rizzo.
So
While
like,
I'm at it, let me hit
have that kind of a pay
last.
structure.
I got last
You're
point on my
literally getting
customized
robbed
for
of
this
half your pay
prestige.
because a judge sucks or two judges suck. All he takes is two judges that suck. One other guy like that guy, and you're fucked out of your money.
Yeah, so you have someone's Big John McCarthy used to say this where he goes, the judges have someone's livelihood in their hands, and refs have someone's health in their hands. And there's like a lot of pressure on that. It's a very important thing.
Y'all ready?
And most of us, I mean, some people are a little bit crazy, but there are fights out there where it really is close, and it's like, look, I understand where someone might see it this way, someone sees it the other way. I understand. So I rewatched recently the Dominic Cruz versus TJ Dillashaw.
Oh yeah.
And that fight is so close, man.
Very close.
And there's so much action, and it's like, I don't really know. I mean, this is
great fight.
Cruz ended up winning it. I have no problem with that. I'm sure someone in TJ's camp would be like, no way, we won that. I get that too. It was great. I mean, Dominic was like landing these takedowns, but then TJ would pop back up. And then you're like, well, how much does that count for?
Right.
I mean, he got him down, but he pops right back up. I mean, I don't know. It's like all this stuff is very hard.
I forgot that Dominic beat TJ.
Yeah, he took his title. Took back his title.
Wow.
And then he went and lost to
Cody. Cody No Love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dominic Cruz's last fight was incredible. Dude.
Incredible.
That was one of my favorite fights I've ever watched.
It was a Dominic Cruz fight. Like,
Oh shit!
he's
Hold on.
37 years
Put
old
this down.
now.
Damn.
Not just that.
Turn back the time.
But he got caught bad
First round.
in the first round, and then fought a Dominic Cruz fight after that.
And he got caught by Munoz, the guy who knocked out Cody No Love.
Yeah.
Munoz can crack.
That it was like it answered every question about him. It almost made you go like, ooh, this guy hasn't lost anything.
Yes.
He was moving as good as he's ever moved. He was striking as good as he's ever struck, and his chin held up too.
Yep.
So you're like, well, that's a problem now for that division.
That's a good argument for him not getting some fights stopped that were stopped, like the Henry Cejudo fight, where he felt like it was stopped too soon. Like he's like, yeah, I get hurt. Give me a chance. I'll get out of it.
That was
Maybe
a little bit
not.
quick, that stoppage with Cejudo. He did get hurt.
He got hurt a little bit quick. I mean, but I'm in his corner in that regard. Like, I feel like a referee has to take into account the resiliency of the fighter. And guys like Dominic Cruz, his mind is so strong. I was so happy to interview him because I love the guy. So watching him win like that after no one has had their resolve tested more than Dominic Cruz. He's had so many surgeries. He's had so many fucking catastrophic injuries.
He missed years of his prime.
Yeah.
Missed years of his prime, like when he was the absolute best guy in the division, no question.
Yep.
Came back, got the title back, then lost it, then had more injuries after that.
Yep.
Came back, and just to sort of watch that, it was like, at that point, it's like, I don't even care how you feel about him. You have to be rooting for this dude at this point.
Yes.
Like,
You have to be. Yeah, I mean, or not. I mean, whatever. He's
I guess you don't have
amazing,
to, but I think you should.
Amazing commentator too. He's one of my favorite commentators. He's so technical, very good at just breaking down scenarios and what's happening because he's not just an MMA fighter, but and not just an analyst, but he also coaches people. So it's like he has a website now. I believe he has a website dedicated to like tutorials specifically on his footwork, which is amazing. I mean, Dominic Cruz is like a real innovator in terms of footwork and movement. Like when he came along, it took alpha male many fighters to fight him before they kind of cracked the code. And they cracked it with Cody, but I attribute a lot of that to Cody's skills lined up well with Dominic. Cody is a very good wrestler who is
Caught me by surprise.
knockout power and he's fast. The speed was a big factor in that. Yeah, big factor. And that had, and it was also the team at Alpha Male had prepared Uriah Faber, TJ. They had prepared for Dominic so many times. They knew what to expect. They had a lot of his patterns sort of in their head.
Yeah, for sure.
Who else is on this weekend? Tui Vasa, Derek Lewis.
For who gets to be that guy in the division.
That's a good fight too. Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa is a great fight. You know, they're talking about John Jones and Stipe for an interim title because Francis has to lose.
Oh shit!
Well, I saw John Jones tweet it, calling him out.
What else? know,
People.
yeah. How about Andre Arlovski?
Still doing it.
Fucking swinging. Keep swinging.
Well, it's the cannoneer Derek Brunson.
That's a big fight.
That's a very big fight.
Ever since Derek Brunson dyed his hair blonde, he's undefeated.
You don't want to see blonde Derek Brunson.
Blonde very tough guy. The wrong guy.
Well, he does seem to have like really turned a corner where he kind of went from being this guy who was almost falling into a gatekeeper type status. Like we start thinking you're a real contender if you can beat Derek Brunson.
Yep.
So going on this streak now where you're like, ooh, Derek Brunson is actually really looking like he's putting it all together now. That was pretty interesting.
That's another example of how goddamn good Style Bender lit him up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, he did. That was the one. But that's almost what I meant by that. Is that was the fight where we all like kind of started realizing how good he was putting it together for MMA.
Yeah.
You know, like where you're like, oh wow, he can really deal, and with a wrestler too, that he was really able to deal with that.
Such a great sport.
Yeah, it's the best.
I never get tired of watching fights. Never.
It's the only sport. I mean, I grew up loving I loved basketball, and I used to play basketball. I used to love watching baseball and football and all this. I don't watch any sport anymore, but I watch all the UFCs.
Yeah.
Because I just can't. It's like I got 2 kids now. I got a career and got all this stuff.
Appreciate that heal though.
Justify
That med
so
pack
much
you hit me
time
with.
that I'm spending on this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like
That shit came in handy.
I'm gonna pick one.
Where are you?
Oh shit!
Someone help!
All right.
Using steam pistol.
Dave Smith, you're the fucking man. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you
always.
so much, brother.
You're
I
awesome.
always enjoy it. You're fucking. I'm just in awe of you, dude. It's incredible what you've built here, man.
It's an accident.
Well, it's a glorious accident, and whether you want it or not, now you have it.
Okay. I'll take it.
Can I just
yeah,
say
please.
that? By the way, you know my podcast part of the problem, but me and Lewis just started doing an MMA podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yo MMA Wrap. Every week we wrap up the last week in MMA. So, and we're just idiots.
Is
about
your
it.
logo like Yo MTV Raps?
No, it is, Joe Rogan. No, it is. But we're just literally, it's just being like silly and funny and having fun with it.
Beautiful.
But yeah, check that out.
Beautiful. All right. And Instagram, Twitter, it's all Dave Smith.
At Comic Dave Smith on Twitter, at The Problem Dave Smith on Instagram.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night. All day.
Hello, Joseph. Good to see you, man. Never called you Joseph. That's okay. I never called you Joshua. I think I did like 5 minutes ago.
That's all right. My mom and my wife.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Depends on the context.
First of all, we should talk about the people that got off
Shoot over here, bro.
I'm down.
Come on, my guy.
because
You just like ran the creeper right into me.
there's 2 men out there that would still be in jail because of you talking about it and you putting the heat on.
He's in the doorway as soon as you turn. He's right here behind you.
Yeah.
Look, hurry up.
Yeah, and you know, it's hard
There you go.
to determine with any certainty the various factors that go into an exoneration.
Hello.
Or
Somebody kill that
prosecutors drop the charge. But there are 2 immovable truths. 2 young black men have a new lease on life, and have had horrific nightmares end.
Should have power
And
now.
I know that this platform and this show not only helped that, but were a driving force behind it. And I know it not just based on what I think, I know it based on empirical evidence, because there was a time when I was asked to come to Lawrence, Kansas, and sit at the Lawrence Police Department on the case against Ron Forrest Washington, so that the Lawrence Police Department could tell me, here's the evidence we have against your client. And before the meeting started, the district attorney walked in the room, and instead of saying hello to me, She said, "Welcome to the army." Now, that was a direct reference to something I said on this podcast, and that I quickly, right after saying it, caught myself and corrected the context in which I was saying it. And I said that was a horrible way to put it, or whatever I said. But the context in which I was saying it was, in my mind, that if you are a black man or woman caught in the criminal justice system in Lawrence, Kansas, that is the armpit. So I knew then and there that she was paying attention. And not just paying attention, but paying attention to this podcast. And she knew full well that I had cavalry behind me. What, how much that factored into the story I'll tell later about other charges and what happened to Albert Wilson, the same prosecutor. We'll never know.
Isn't there also an argument that you expressing the facts of the case outside of a courtroom setting where they're trying to win?
Fuck you.
Isn't there a problem with prosecutors and defendants and...
Yo, jump down to the railroad tracks. There's nothing down here.
It's a game. And I don't mean it's a game like it's trivial. I mean it's a game like people...
Yeah, jump down. Hurry up, hurry up.
Yeah, there's a part of that. But I think that in recognizing, and you have spoken about this, recognizing that sort of fault that exists amongst us as human beings,
I'm not seeing any light.
that is especially so.
Next time, let me pick up everybody if we go down like that. Because then everybody get... You see, I picked up Ender, and Ender got an immediate armor with 30% health.
If you think about what's going on with Purvis Payne right now, what's going on with Julius Jones, with Rodney Reed. I mean, Purvis Payne is going to get out in 5 years. Julius Jones, Rodney Reed is facing a new trial. Those results were brought to bear by
Check 6.
public pressure. So one immovable...
Yo, I'm dead and about to be... Damn.
Two before. The one sort of overarching...
Yeah, there you go.
is that this works.
That happened.
Because I want to tell you the spirit in which I'm here today. And, you know,
Yo, real fall. Get close to everybody unless there's something to click.
Innocence Project, I don't speak for them, even though I'm the ambassador advisor. There are other organizations that I'm involved with.
Bro, go help.
That pay attention to news cycles and media. I'm here as Josh Dubin, the human being.
Oh my God.
that is doing
Bro, attack it. What? Bro, that's a... Wow. Wow.
doing my
That happened.
to help in whatever way I can. Whether it's a drop in the bucket, a grain of sand, or something more.
Okay, I gotta switch my main weapon
To
now.
help free people that are wrongfully incarcerated. Period. Full stop. This show has been a critical part of telling these stories and getting that out there. I'm not here to have a debate about people's perception of things other people say or pass judgment or anything like that. That's not my role, and that's not what I'm here for. And I think that we need to have a discussion about race in the criminal injustice system. And I know know enough about you to know your heart, and that we're going to have that today. And that is the spirit in which I'm here. And I know the direct results because 2 young black men were exonerated as a result, at least in part, to this show.
How many cases are you dealing with, like, concurrently? How many cases do you have on file, like, right now, where you have to go over the details of someone who may be innocent?
The answer to it is thousands. I get mail every day from jails all across the country.
Well, we were talking about this earlier, about how much your business has exploded because of these kind of conversations. How do you manage that?
Okay, so
this episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens.
Even if you have the healthiest diet imaginable, it's hard to give our body everything it needs, which is why I take Athletic Greens. Just one tasty scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. It's like taking a multivitamin, probiotic, greens, superfood, and more in one convenient daily serving. It fills the gaps in your diet, supports energy, helps with gut health, and can replace all those pills. AG1 always follows the latest research. They invest in high-quality ingredient sources and go beyond third-party testing to ensure their customers get the very best. Join the movement of people taking ownership of their daily health and focusing on nutritional products they really need in the simplest manner possible. And when you go to athleticgreens.com/Rogan today, you'll get 1 free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. That's athleticgreens.com/Rogan. This episode is brought to you by MeUndies, the only underwear I ever use. In fact, I tried some other underwear recently and they were fucking terrible. MeUndies is a shit. They're super soft, they're super comfortable, they look great, and they're made with micromodal, a sustainable fabric. Valentine's Day is not so far off, kids, and what you want from your Valentine is new underwear. You can even take it a step further and get matching underwear for you and your partner. Ooh! MeUndies has a great offer for listeners of this podcast. For a limited time only, get 25% off your first order of matching pairs for Valentine's Day. Be sure to check out all MeUndies super soft undies, socks, bralettes, and loungewear. And as a first-time purchaser, you also get 15% off and free shipping right to your door. To get 25% off matching pairs, 15% off your first order, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to MeUndies.com/Rogan. That's MeUndies.com/Rogan. Tap the banner or visit the episode's page to learn more. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Do you have goals that you've been sitting on all year? Like maybe you wanted to sell those sick t-shirts you've been designing. Maybe you want to make a professional portfolio. Or maybe you want a place to grow your brand. Whatever your goals are, Squarespace is the place to start. They've got so many amazing website templates made by world-class designers, so you can create your own ideal site from scratch. They've also got great e-commerce tools that help you track your progress, scale your business, and monitor your brand. All the tools are there, ready for your taking. Head on over to squarespace.com/Joe for a free trial, and then when you are ready to launch, use the offer code Joe to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. This episode is brought to you by CBDMD. January is crucial in setting the tone for the year, and in 2022, that has never been more true. That's why my friends at CBDMD want to help you start now, stay well, and tackle all your New Year's resolutions. And if those resolutions happen to involve fitness, they've got an award-winning topical product to keep you moving all year long. It's called CBD Freeze with Menthol. It offers fast-acting, temporary cooling relief for minor aches and pains in a convenient and easy-to-use roller.
I'm gonna switch that later.
And
I'm gonna try out I'm gonna use the one I'm using.
Year started off right. They're offering JRE listeners 25% off
got my
your next
camera
order
home.
when you use the promo code Rogan at checkout. So once again, that's CBDMD.com. Use the promo code Rogan to save 25% off your purchase of superior CBD products from CBDMD.
We've been walking for miles.
The Innocence Project,
It looks the same.
which I am, again, I can't speak on behalf of them, but what the Innocence
Work with them.
Yes, I'm the ambassador advisor to the Innocence Project, which makes me sort of, somebody that it's a unique role because I have done so much pro bono work and awareness raising that there was a decision to give me that title. They have a remarkable mail room center that processes mail from prisoners from across the country. Then there is a network called the Innocence Network, which are franchisees, if you will, of the Midwest Innocence Project, which my co-counsel in the Ron Torres Washington case. And there's one in New Orleans. They're all over the country that operate on their own, and they are constantly getting mail. And then there are just people like myself, Jason Flom, that are constantly getting mail. And so much that you need to be able to have a network of resources. So I have decided to take on a role at Cardozo Law School, which is where the Innocence Project started. It's what they call a field clinic of law students over 25 years ago, founded by Barry Sheff and Peter Neufeld. I was offered the role of becoming the executive director of a new program called the Redemption Program. Look, again, this is why not only the show, but being able to find common ground with people we disagree with is so critical in this process.
This must be where they make
the chairman of Marvel, Ike Perlmutter, and his wife. Him down. It's going to be called the Perlmutters. The chairman of Marvel Comics? Yeah, Marvel Entertainment. And he's a right-leaning Republican that is friends with President Trump. We otherwise wouldn't have much to agree on, but we found common ground, and that is a role that I'm going to be taking on. This is going to stink. Start in the fall. Now I'm going to have more resources to help more people, because Ike Perlmutter and his wife Lori have agreed to fund it for 10 years.
How did they get involved? Like, what is his interest in criminal?
Creep! Over there!
Rotten hell. I can't talk too much about it because the case is still pending. But what is out there publicly, I can talk about. It's like an episode of like Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm gone way off the rails. His DNA, his wife's DNA was stolen.
And keep out of sight.
It was a condo dispute about the tennis pro that descended into chaos. It started as this crazy civil case where he was accused of, spreading misinformation. There was one faction of people that want the tennis pro to doubt
this was intended to fight zombies.
Tennis pro was very good friends with him, right? And and he cared about this woman. She was a single mother. He's a very philanthropic guy when no one's looking. He went to Iron Man in a disguise because he doesn't want people to know who he is. He's just a very private guy. So there was this faction in this condo community that wanted the tennis pro removed because she was selling real estate out of the tennis pro office, and this faction wanted her to partner up with another couple that sold real estate. It was crazy. It was a condo dispute right out of Boca del Vista. So he took the opposing side and said, "You're not removing her."
Looks like you were right.
In any event, about a year later, this hate mail against the people that wanted her removed, this one individual, starts to arrive in the community, and it's accusing him of all sorts of awful shit. Accusing this other man of being child molester, murderer, all kinds of craziness, and there's Jewish stars on it, and like Hebrews sign, all misspelled. So this guy
knocking them down.
Perlmutter is behind it, and they have Ike and his wife subpoenaed as third-party witnesses in connection with the Thomas lawsuit. Subpoenaed to sit in deposition, and they framed him and his wife, and they stole his DNA.
I can get up.
From they gave her water.
So quick that happened. So quick.
And they falsely claimed, and it was published in the New York Times, that her DNA matched.
That was so fucking quick.
So
they set her up from giving her a glass of water?
And him. They gave him this paper to touch that apparently to get his epithelial skin cells, phony exhibits.
Holy shit.
So the famed criminal defense lawyer, Roy Black, brought me into the case just to really help with trial strategy, which is allegedly my forte. And then it descended into DNA, and I have some expertise in that from my work at the Innocence Project, because all the cases that we do at the Innocence Project are using biological evidence to get people off. So when Roy had sort of hit his limit on what he knew about DNA, He said, now I need more from you, and will you join the case? So I figured out how they had set her up. I figured out that it wasn't her DNA, and the case ultimately got dismissed. The only thing that exists now is his case against the insurance company for setting him up, because the allegations in the lawsuit now, he's suing Chubb because it was a Chubb lawyer that engineered this.
So they know, they have the actual correspondence, like the actual evidence where someone said we're going to get his DNA?
Yes, and it's all a matter of public record.
Jesus
And one of the guys was a Chubb attorney.
Well, that should land you in jail for a long fucking time.
One of the things we were able to do is I testified before the Florida House Judiciary Committee and used this case as an example, and the testimony is out there publicly to change the law in Florida, citing this case from a misdemeanor to a felony, and we were able to get that done.
So it is possible that someone could do something like that where they could set you up for a crime and steal your DNA, and that would be a misdemeanor in some cases?
Not anymore. Not in Florida.
Not in Florida.
But they didn't prosecute this man for it.
What?
No, they did not prosecute him for it. Palm Beach decided not to prosecute him. But to answer your question, so the way Ike Perlmutter, a strange bedfellow, if you will, with me in criminal justice reform, and his wife got interested, is he is a very hands-on guy. And why aren't you paying attention to my case? This was 5 years ago, and I said, there's no trial date. And by the way, I have a man sitting on death row in Florida, and I became lead trial counsel for him. And, I'm going to be busy with that. And it was the Clemente Aguirre case. So Ike started to pay attention to the case in the media, because it was in the Orlando Sentinel every day. I guess the Palm Beach Post has some affiliate. He started to read the media attention. So I ended up, the story about Clemente Aguirre has been told so many times, but I ended up getting, my phone's off. I ended up getting him exonerated with a village of people. I don't want to make it like it was just me. And the day that I walked him out, Ike had called me so many times that I thought there was an emergency. And he said, can you please come to Palm Beach before you leave Florida? And I said, sure. So I drove down to Palm Beach a couple of days later, and he sat me down, and he's a very stoic, older Israeli man. And he had a tear in his eye, and he said, I realized that his case was still very much alive. We hadn't figured out the DNA. He said, by watching what just happened with this man in Orlando, I realized that if I didn't have the resources and the means by which to have you and Roy Black, that I might have ended up like him. And I'm like, well, you wouldn't have ended up on death row, but it was like his moment of clarity and his epiphany. And then he's been by my side and my partner in this, and that's why I always stress the importance of, we're never going to see eye to eye with everyone, and we're certainly not going to see eye to eye with anyone.
Oh, how cute.
In a two-party system.
That's a problem.
Shoot.
And it's a huge problem.
Little sprinkler system just twirling in circles over there.
When you have a two-party system, you have people that feel like they have to subscribe to all the opinions on one side.
She's been doing it there for a few days.
If they agree to the critical ones, like what's critical to them, whether it's a woman's
Caught her
right to
before
choose,
doing it when
or
he
whether
cleaned
it's
it up.
freedom of speech, or whether it's gun control, like whatever it is on the one side that you feel like you need to be aligned with, and then you'll accept all the other nonsense that goes with it instead of what most people are. Most people are in the center, like the vast majority, but that's not an option. There's no center option. So a guy like Ike Perlmutter, he seems like a very compassionate guy, but he's also a businessman. And when you're a businessman and you want your taxes taken care of correctly, and you want loopholes in place, and you want to do what these guys have been doing forever with their money.
Yeah.
That's a right-wing thing.
Yeah, listen. For full disclosure, Ike is very conservative and abides by every law when it comes to
yeah,
his
no,
taxes.
I don't mean it in a negative way.
No, I know, and that's what I've found. I was just joking. I mean, look, that is what I've found. He has become like family to me. He knows my children. You know, I love the man, and I love his wife. And
That's great that there's common ground, man. There's more common ground than there's not. People, they get ideological and they get tribal, and they find themselves segmented off in these groups that can't communicate with other groups. And that's one of the things you see, like even in the podcast world, as weird as it is, there's certain people that like you can't go on that guy's show because he's right wing, or a right wing person will say like, why do you talk to that person? They're a libtard. Like they have these like ridiculous ideas of what you should and shouldn't be doing, and like I feel like the more
Right where the
opportunities
bag-
we
between
have
the bag and the
to
purple
just
thing.
find common ground, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah, and that's why I will continue to be here and talk to you, because I've always like, this is the biggest problem with our society, and I don't even want to go near. I hate even saying the word cancel culture. That's just like an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it's an easy word. It's an easy phrase.
And the more difficult thing to do is take a step back and hover above the moment and think about it this way. Like, what's on my mind right now? And if people can't get this, they just can't get it, as far as I'm concerned. This situation with this young man, Amir Locke, who is just executed in Minneapolis by officer, in my opinion, because you always have to say that these days, who
I don't understand.
Okay, so this is the best example, current example of why this is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. It is a human rights issue. Amir Locke is a young black man in his early 20s.
It's a boat!
Minneapolis, carjackings in cities are in the news cycle quite a bit lately. You hear about them in LA, you hear about them all over.
I'm reloading!
And in Minneapolis, he goes out, no criminal record, and legally buys a gun. Why? Because he's a door dasher. So it's obviously a concern to him.
There's the swarm!
He's sleeping at a friend's house. This happened just last week. He's sleeping at a friend's house. And either 4 or 5 police officers execute what's referred to as a no-knock warrant. Within 3 or 4 seconds, apparently, he is sleeping. 5 seconds later, by second number 9, he's dead. Now, when the doors blow open, 5 cops come in. You don't know who they are at first. And you go to reach for a gun that you legally have, and you get blown away. That is a problem. And here's the problem. I want to go back to this no-knock. But this is an epidemic happening mostly to people of color, to black men and women, and they're not all no-knock situations. But Breonna Taylor was a no-knock warrant situation. Antoine.
Wasn't it a no-knock situation about marijuana as well?
Yes. Botham Jean was not a no-knock situation, but it was the same type of thing, right? Here in Texas, where
We got a lurker!
white female
This'll
officer
slow them
said
down.
he's eating ice cream in his own place, and she comes in and thinks she's in the wrong apartment and blows him away. Tamira Rice, Eric Garner, Fontability, Alejandro Castillo, Dante Wright, the list goes on. It sickens me. And I'll tell you something, these are all men and women of color getting blown away and executed. Now look, some of these people, their families are dear friends of mine. Botham Jean's sister is a dear friend of mine. So I see that her name is Elisa Finley, and she's become an amazing voice and has somehow summoned the strength to be an activist. Antoine Rose's mom, Michelle Kennedy, as well. And these are people that, to me, mean something.
That's right, bitches!
I try to console them. I try to help their causes. But let's take like a step back and look what these no-knock raids are about. By the way, the difference between a knock raid and a no-knock raid is the difference between each guy. So let's forget about Democrats and Republicans. No-knock raids were born out of the 1980s. Just Say No, Nancy
Eyes
Reagan
open for
war on
alert.
drugs campaign. The rationale behind it, not that she was responsible for the rationale behind it from law enforcement standpoint was we want to suppress drug dealers.
Silence that son of a bitch!
We want to prevent them from being able to grab a gun or
So they have warrants, no-knock warrants?
yeah.
So you would go in front of a judge and you'd say, this is probable cause, this person's selling drugs, and they have guns, and we want a no-knock warrant, a specific type of warrant.
Correct. So that's exactly right. And so it was born out of the 1980s, quote-unquote, war. So in the wake of the devastation that it's caused,
More coming in!
because there is some, whether you call it institutional racism, whether you call it whatever it is, we're just not living in reality if we are not recognizing the fact that there are many white
Silence that son of a bitch!
someone of color
Screamer's gone!
they think there's a problem. They have all of these conscious and unconscious bias. This is not a coincidence that all of these people that are being killed in these situations are no knock warrant, black person run from the So to get back to these no knock warrants, the failure is not on the part of Republicans or Democrats. It's on the part of all of them as human beings and politicians. The George Floyd Policing Act, for which Joe Biden and Kamala Harris championed, and I think Tim Scott, who is the only African-American Republican, really got behind, it ultimately failed. And that failure is not a Democratic failure or a Republican failure. It's a failure of all of us.
What was in it?
There were many police reforms in it, but critical to this conversation was the George Floyd Policing Act sought to do away with no-knock warrants by telling municipalities, we are going to cut off your access to state and federal funds unless and until you stop this practice.
So when an act like this is proposed, how does it get reviewed, and what makes it get denied?
So it passed the House because the vote was largely on party lines, and then it didn't pass the Senate because they could not get enough votes for it.
Fans should buy us some
So what ends up happening is that when you involve, this is my theory, anytime you involve human beings in any endeavor, it gets messy, right?
Yeah.
Egos, power plays, insecurities, all this messy stew of emotions comes into it.
Eyes open for
Am I
alert.
pleasing my constituents? Am I going to anger policing units? Is it going too far?
Gotta go.
So it encompassed many things.
Did it come close?
It was 12 or 14 votes shot. So the problem is that, it passes the House, it fails in the Senate, and the votes were
Red
largely
is ready to
along
roast.
party lines. And Democrats are quick to say, oh, but the Republicans didn't do it, and Republicans are quick to say, well, Democrats put all this other stuff into it, and
They add things to the act?
yeah, of course, it covered other things, but it takes people on both sides to say, where can we find common ground? Because when I think of Washington, and I think of politicians, and I think of Capitol Hill, and legislature, any of those words, I get a fucking debate right here, without even knowing what the conversation is going to be about.
Just because it's such a quagmire.
Oh, I need
Conjures
bullets.
up-
Yeah.
It conjures
Bullets,
up
bullets, bullets.
a visceral response in me. People that just cannot figure out a way to sit across the table or next to each other and figure shit out. And I don't know. It's like, I guess a fair question would be like, all right, Ruben, if it's that easy to do, not, teenagers. I just know what I see, and I know that we all need to step away from what we think are allegiance in this two-party system. Because I'm ready to just like register non-declared or independent. You know, and I'll you know, everybody is so like, you don't ask people about their age, you don't ask them who they voted for. You know, I voted for Joe Jorgensen.
As did I.
Because I just feel like that was my way of saying
no. Yeah, saying no, this is a nonsense situation. What do you think that in our lifetimes we're ever going to see like a legitimate third-party candidate? Because it seems like there's no, at least the general consensus in this country is that anyone who's independent is not serious. It's not a serious person for president. There's no one who's been independent where it stands out since Ron Paul. Or excuse me, Ross Perot, I meant. Yeah. That's what I meant, actually, sorry. But when he was running, he was in a very unique situation where he had massive amounts of resources. So he could actually buy, this is pre-internet, he bought entire half-hour blocks on network television to explain why you're getting fucked. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Wild shit.
I remember it, and I remember being a kid, teenager, whatever I was, and rooting for him because he was this little guy, and
that's a great way of talking. Yeah, he was a character.
He had those droopy earlobes, you know, and I was like, this little motherfucker speak. See, this is like why I am hopeful.
Grid is powered.
Because you just brought me back to like when you saw and smell something. Like, I don't know why. It's like going back to my living room couch as a kid. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we have hope. I think there's still hope, but we have a problem. We have a major problem when it comes to the way you feel about American politics and the shenanigans going on behind the scenes. What's really
I'm reloading.
what we would like is it to be a representative of the people and everyone working together to make the world a better place. The environment better, to make the economy better, the infrastructure better, make the inner city communities better. It's not good. They're working for the people of government.
And that's what muddies. That. You know, I was with you. Vis-a-vis hope until you got to the last part of the sentence, and that's where I start to lose hope, right?
Yeah, it's a problem, but I think people realizing that this problem will exist forever unless we change.
Eyes open for alert.
And one of the problems that we're having is when you think along ideological lines, and when you do, you will not judge people that are on your team that are fucking it over for everybody else. You'll give them a pass. You'll give them a pass for doing all the same things the Republicans did, or doing all the same things the Democrats did. They're doing all the same things for their special interest groups and whatever the lobbyists are setting up for them. And you'll forgive them for padding these acts with these ridiculous measures and where nobody wants to vote for them. Like when you look at the Build Back Better, I forget who the politician was, but they had that Build Back Better bill, and he brought it up in front of these press people. He showed this how thick it is, and he goes, "Do you really think they've read this?" He goes, "Who do you think has read this? There's thousands and thousands of pages. Has anybody combed over this and they know all the details of this bill?" He goes, "Nobody. None of them are doing it. They're just passing it because their party wants it."
Especially when our mindset these days is to grab the lowest hanging fruit in terms of headlines and use that as the basis upon which we form not only opinions but make decisions and decide how will I act and who will judge me for acting that way based on whatever decision I come to. And I question whether when people tell me they have an opinion about something, the same way I question myself. It's a bit of a mind fuck, you know? Do I really feel this way? Or do I feel this way because I'm afraid of whatever backlash I'm going to get?
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody's worried about backlash now, and it's designed that way. It's engineered that way. The system is engineered that when you step outside the lines, they will attack you, and that will force a lot of people who are watching that to step quiet.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, the easy thing to do is to stay quiet, to objective enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to be a Democrat or a Republican. I'm going to be a free thinking human.
Down!
And the way that I try to apply that, look, I'm not trying to be, one of the things that I have a real, this is my psychological
Eyes open for a look.
I worry about coming off self-righteous, or that I'm trying to save the planet, or, it's like I worry
son of
about
a bitch!
other people.
That's good.
Don't shoot me!
I hope it is.
No, it is. I know you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. You don't want anybody to think you're pompous. You're not.
And sometimes it's in my heart in a way that it hurts me to even think about that. But I understand that people
It's a ball!
will come to whatever conclusion. So I'm not trying to be a martyr. I just feel like I'm not here today speaking on behalf of the Innocence Project. That didn't my DNA. I will take that with me.
Reload!
That was that I lost. But I will take that experience with me. I just feel like it requires us to take a step back and if you just look at no knocking, it's just the example we're using. Look at there's an example of this happening. Not just this. There was a kid during one of these no knocking where they threw a flashbang through the window and it landed in a baby's crib.
Yeah.
And a cop got, all caught up in it, or Nick Autry. There was the case of Marvin Guy, who is still in
that son of a bitch!
Marvin Guy, in this case, another no knocking on it. And, look.
Come on, bitches!
Think about, 5 a.m. Your house gets stormed. You don't know who.
Eyes open for a lurker.
You've got a legal gun. He starts getting fired at. He fires back, and there's an explosion.
Fucking wow.
And I encourage people to look these cases up.
Ball coming in!
One that I mentioned earlier, the baby in the crib, Nikki Autry, just how it sounds. As a police officer.
Ball exterminated.
The baby's name is Boo Boo. And you can read online about the settlement. Family guy. No, horrific injuries. Marvin Guy has been sitting in prison here in Texas. And, the guy, there's a hail of gunfire, and a white officer is killed. And he wasn't the one that hit the officer. It was one of the other officers' bullets.
Hush it, people.
But he gets blamed for it because he shoots back. And it's like this is a human rights issue, and this is a state of emergency as it relates to people of color in this country. And these, there is I hate when people toss around statistics with me, because I'm always like, yeah, where'd you get that stat from? Especially in an age where, you got to check your sources.
Right.
But there is a reason
Don't think we are alone.
why the African American population is roughly 13% in the U.S. and roughly half of the wrongful incarceration, exonerations, are black men and women. That should blow people's fucking minds.
Right, because that's just the exonerations. How many people don't get exonerated?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
What is the percentage of people that are wrongly accused, convicted, prosecuted, put in jail, and they lose their lives?
We'll never know
There's the
because we don't, the people that have studied this have estimated that range to be
Eyes open for a look.
in 1%.
Put down that bull.
1%. That means out of every 100 people that get prosecuted, one person will be doing it.
Right. So, and I know that's a solid one I just gave you. It was a study done by the University of Michigan, and that's just
Got injured.
So if you think about that in the context of the other thing that we incarcerate African American So this is not about martyrdom. It's not. This is a human rights issue in this country, and you see it when we go back to the two cases that we.
Silence that son of a bitch!
You helped save community. This show helped save community. And, we're here so we can keep doing it. So we do more. But I can tell you in those cases that Ron Torres, Washington,
What?
accused of a horrific murder
Well,
that
see?
he did not commit.
That's why I don't never watch shit when it first comes out, cause like it's always bullshit.
He was good for it because he was quote unquote the black guy. Because someone testified that there was a black guy in the parking lot downstairs. And the whole case was built
Go silent.
on, there was stunning evidence that the husband of this woman that was butchered did it. And there was her blood on his clothing.
Grid is
There
ready
was-
to roast.
I've talked about it. His hair in her dead hand. The police knew that she had been beaten by him and was afraid of him, and had told people if anything
Grid is
happens to me,
powered.
he did it. Ron Torres, Washington was threatened by this man that committed these murders with a knife. Days before this happened, a week before, got a problem, and the entire case was built on what I now know was a problematic timeline of, and the police suspected the victim's husband.
Put the screamer
This
down!
timeline that they constructed through cell phone records, and the husband was having an argument with
It's
the
a bomb!
victim. Heated argument that they were pushing and shoving the witnesses. She ends up murdered an hour later.
I need meds!
They based
Silence that son of a bitch!
I'm down!
charging Ron Torres, Washington, on the husband's cell phone traveling down a highway. The guy takes a picture of himself in a
Reloading!
rest stop bathroom, takes a selfie of himself, because that's just a natural thing anybody does. I'm taking a piss, let me just take a selfie. It was clearly done to try to conjure up an alibi. And they basically ruining a young man's life. Trial for 6 years. That was issue in and of itself.
Put the
He
screamer down!
ended up getting tried for a couple years. And they're going to retry him again. Right? Based on this cell phone, they're going to believe where they were. So, I didn't listen to this presentation.
Silence that son of a
I
bitch!
got one of the best cell phones in the world that taught the state's experts. There was
Y'all almost got out of that shit.
that husband stopped on that freeway and headed back. in
Yeah,
the other
they
direction.
did. They did a whole bunch of shit to me last minute. They did me dirty as hell.
And I figured it out with him, with his help, that he had plenty of time to go back and commit the crime.
Yo, I'm behind you. Pick me up.
So I had the Midwest Innocence Project as my co-counsel. I had been discussing the case and getting, and there was a lot of activism that this show and other people that got behind it. As a result of this show, it started to generate that pressure. So, and the Albert Wilson case, which you know about, which is this young black man that was at a KU and gets accused of sexual assault of a white girl, who I believe strongly because I heard you won him in the trial based on ineffective assistance of counsel. So I had
Put the screamer down!
because Albert was offered a deal with with it than no jail, and he wouldn't take it because he said, I'm not confessing to something I didn't do. And Ron Torres was facing a retrial as well. So I had been in discourse with the DA's office.
Wow, I tried to, it like hit me.
That they finally realized.
No, I think somebody shot me by accident. Yeah, we're all dead.
With these cases. And they will never come out and say these two men are innocent. Fucked up. She was a new DA, and I give her enough credit to do what she finally did. It didn't feel good along the way because I was not treated very well, but this wasn't about me. She would alternatingly be kind to me and understanding, and then she would also walk into a room and say, welcome to the armpit. There was a lot of passive-aggressive stuff, but I know it was an indication to me like, aha, this works. And the ripple effect of it is such that, so here's one for you. I try very hard to keep up, and I'm not great at it, with Instagram Messenger, with the messages I'm getting on Instagram that come as a result of being on the podcast. There's one guy, and I can go months without looking at it, but there's one guy that reached out to both me and Jason Flom. His name is Jordan Grotzinger, and he works at a big firm called Greenberg Traurig. And he had never done this kind of work before, but was like very relentless in pursuing, I really want to help, I really want to help. And, you know, he just took on a case in California. I'm trying to remember the case. The Pierre Rushing case. And is throwing the full resources of his firm behind the case. And, you know, he called me, he was hiking with Jason Flom in LA, and he's like, this is amazing, the way this works. Look at the ripple effect of what you're doing. So there are more people to save, and I just think that it takes, there's a lot of what can I do to help? Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Whether it's writing the letters, serving on juries, and we'll talk about that, but not trying to get out of it. Because there is a movement taking place here, and you made a promise to me that I wasn't expecting, and that is bearing fruit in a way that is the sweetest fruit you can imagine. Because, you know, I want you to hear and speak to these men. And you met Robert last time I was here, but when I called Ron Torres Washington and told them that they dropped the case against him, I cried like a child. He fainted. And to hear the relief and the joy, and, you know, out of the two of them, I got very close with Albert Wilson and his family, his sister-in-law Nikki. You know, he pulled over to the side of the road when I told him, and we cried together. And, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's no drug, material, but there's just no way to match that feeling. And the fact that we're doing it and making a difference just, you know, is very gratifying.
It is very gratifying. And I should also tell people, you don't believe everything. Because I brought a case to you. I've talked to you about several different scenarios and situations, but there was one case where a guy came up to me, and he had a family member that he said was innocent, and I said, well, get me your information, tell me who that person was, and I'll send it over to Josh. We'll see what's up. And we have a phone call like a couple days later. You know, I think this person's guilty as fuck.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, and I'm look, I thought that about Clemente for a second, until I scratched the surface and I said, not only is he innocent, he's innocent as fuck. Because it's until you hear the whole story.
Right.
And
that is the problem, right? When you're researching something, you're only going to get what's been printed.
Yeah.
I got
or
manhandled.
what somebody's telling you in that moment.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I'm OCD enough, and I guess I have enough existential angst that I literally just printed 3 articles about that case 2 nights ago.
Really?
Knowing I was coming here, just thinking, you know, I deserve to give that a closer look.
Okay.
So I will, and I'm not the only arbiter of, you know, what is or what isn't. I know, like in Clementi's case, I can't talk too much about it because I'm handling the federal civil rights case. But some of the shit that I have found out that the police knew at the scene is so infuriating. And some of the lies that I believe they've told that I've never known, and I've lived that case as much as you could live a case. You know, it's like you think you've heard so much about so many different scenarios and prosecutorial misconduct, cover-ups, lies, that your mind can never be blown again. And, you know, when your mind keeps getting blown, it's fuel for me. And I just don't know, you know, like, it's hard to know how to feel about different reform issues sometimes. Because, like, you know, there's an argument that I heard, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on, that police aren't needed for traffic stops.
That's a weird argument because sometimes they are, right? I've seen people get pulled over for traffic stops and then they pull out a gun and start
Right.
shooting at the cop. So
Right.
what happens there?
No, and I don't know. And I was talking to someone actually this morning.
Where
asked me
is that
how I felt about it. And he said, you know, there's some Western countries where police handle traffic stops with their own. And I said, well, that doesn't seem
Effective.
I don't know.
What if you're pulled over a mass murderer? Like, what if you catch someone, what if someone's got a unlicensed vehicle or whatever, and it turns out the person inside, I mean, this is, I have a friend who's a cop, and we had this conversation recently, because they're trying to pass some new rules for cops in Los Angeles. And one of the things that he was saying is they don't want to pull people over for, like, bad taillights. They don't want to pull people over for failure to signal, for all these different transgressions. And he was saying that the problem with that is this is often how we catch a lot of people that have warrants out for them, and oftentimes it's very dangerous things.
Right, and I've seen, you know, videos of people, you know,
Shooting at cops.
shooting at
Oh shit, the biggest day of football is upon us. Get on the big game, traffic, the official daily fantasy football. You get a free shot at a $1 million top prize with your first deposit. You don't have to be competing to play daily fantasy football. Just pick your lineup, stay under your salary cap. Score enough points to win off the base cap, and you're gonna get a free shot at a $1 million top prize. Download the DraftKings app now and use promo code BROKEN. Play free for a $1 million top prize.
Eyes open for a lurker.
Deposit. That's promo code BROKEN for a free shot to become a millionaire during the NFL's big game. Only at DraftKings, the official daily fantasy football.
Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. According to the latest research, 90% of employers plan to make enhancing the employee experience a top priority in 2020. Happy Workplace continues to attract and keeping great employees. Some employers focus on company culture, others allow for more flexibility in work schedules, and if you need to add more employees to your team, there's ZipRecruiter. Their matching technology helps you find the right people for your roles fast. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. ZipRecruiter uses its powerful technology to find and match the right candidates up with your job. Then it proactively presents these candidates to you. You can then easily review these recommended candidates and invite your top choices to apply for your job, which encourages them to apply faster. Find the right employees for your workplace with ZipRecruiter. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. That's ZipRecruiter.com/ROGAN. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
the cops on a routine traffic stop.
I just saw one the other day. I saw one yesterday, in fact. This guy pulls the guy over. The guy hits the hazard lights, pulls over to the side of the road, totally complies, and then cracks, opens the door, turns behind him, and just starts firing at the cop. And then they're in a fucking gunfight, like out of nowhere.
Yeah,
so if you're a cop and you pull somebody over, there's the very real possibility that you might be in a situation where this person is he's gonna fight for his life because he's guilty of something, or he's got a warrant out for him, he's done something, he's armed, and it was a wild video. It's wild because the guy got out of the car and shooting the cop got out of the car and he's hiding behind the cop car. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, you just, see, that convinces me. It's like, no, so is the solution that there needs to be better training.
That's right, bitches!
Before we go handing a police officer a gun.
Yeah, I think that's 100%. I think there needs to be better training. I think there needs to be better qualifications, and I think there's a long road to get to this point. But I think we've got to get to a place where people respect police because the police are better than all that. And I don't mean all of them. I mean there's for sure bad cops, just like there's for sure bad bankers and every other profession. The problem with a bad cop is someone who cuts corners and lies and fucks with things and fucks with the rules. As a cop, you make other people's lives hell. You put other people in jail. You're not supposed to. You lie about evidence. You withhold information that would exonerate somebody. All of that stuff should be a horrific crime. And it's far too commonplace in the world of prosecutors and police officers and all of this world that we live in, where the people that are supposed to be withholding the law and upholding the law are actually breaking it. Like, that's a giant problem, and I think the only way to fix that is careful examination, massive training. I think you have to treat cops, and my friend Jocko said this very well. Jocko Willink, who's a Navy SEAL and just embodies leadership. Basically every cell in his body. And he said, these guys have to go through real training, and they should be spending a large percentage of the time they're on the force training, whatever that is, 20%, whatever it is. But they should be training the same way tactical troops train, the same way someone would train if they're in special forces operation. You have to be prepared for everything, and you also have to understand this extreme position in society that you have. It's an extreme honor, but it's also an extreme, the job and the obligation and what it means to serve as a police officer, and that's what it is.
Now it's done.
That is an incredible position of power and influence, and it's got to be treated with far more respect than it's treated today. You know, I drove down the street in LA last time I was in town. There's a billboard hiring, like they're looking for cops, and it's like talking about how much you get an hour. You know, how much you get a year. And I was looking at those, what's the last thing you're going to be a cop? I'm not saying that you shouldn't get paid well. You definitely should get paid well. You shouldn't be saying, oh, I need fucking $8,000 a year. That's not what you should be thinking. To go and be a cop, that is the last fucking thing you should be thinking of. You should be called to service and duty. It should be something where you're thinking, you know, I want to be better for my community, and I think I'll do a good police officer. Fair versus a crime person.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've seen similar ads, and I've thought you got to try to induce people somehow to want to do this, especially now. And it's tough to be a cop.
Yeah.
And
Eyes open for a lurk.
One of my biggest pet peeves is broad generalizations.
I'm reloading!
There's bad cops. There's great cops. There's bad judges. There was just video of this judge, this white woman using, you know, the most horrific racist language, working the video in a clearly racist way. And it's like you're sitting there shuddering. She's on the bench, you know, but then there's amazing judges like Judge Galuzzo, who's in Clemente Aguirre's case, and is like, not on my watch are you gonna, like, you know, abuse this man's constitutional rights. But
here we go.
There's great cops, and it's a hard job, but everything you said made total sense. Yes, the part of it that becomes much more complicated
Hush it, people.
is you come to that job with certain life experiences,
This'll
value
work.
beliefs, you know, philosophical leanings
Something you should see here.
that inform that training and how you're going to act. So this whole, you know, driving while black phenomenon is a real thing.
Creeping
So I worry that, I guess my what gets left sort of out of the mix or lost in the shuffle is, you know, I don't know what the solution to
slow
this
them
is.
down.
Is how do you teach racial sensitivity? And I've often struggled, and I have lately, with trying to figure out whether it is nature or nurture.
For police officers?
No, for human beings. Someone is dissimilar to them and decide whether or not they, when I see something or someone dissimilar, I equate that with not good.
I think it's almost always being not used. Because we look at little kids. When little kids have a friend that's white or friend that's black, they don't. That's just my friend. There's a famous video of these 2 or 4 year olds that haven't seen each other. You seen it?
Somebody
make you cry.
someone sent it to me, and
It'll make you cry. They just this little boy and his friend, and one of them's black, one of them's white. And one
Refill?
you're like, this is supposed to be there.
Oh my god.
Economics or by neighborhood. It's nonsense. And there's a problem with people that there's so many areas in life.
I'm reloading.
It's easy to put people when you're a cop, it's a real problem when you see the same crimes, same situations over and over and over again in your house. And I think the root problem with that is that the source of what's causing a lot of the economic despair, a lot of the rampant crime and drug dealing and gang members, that's never addressed. No one ever goes into these neighborhoods and says, there's like think about the amount of money that Halliburton got with no bid contracts to rebuild Iraq. Fucking insane amounts of money to go build up shit that we blew up, right? Why wouldn't they do that with Baltimore? Why wouldn't they do that with the South Side of Chicago? Why wouldn't they
Brownsville.
exactly
You know,
hire giant corporations to go in and clean them up, make them safer, present a plan, and put a shitload
wire
of money
down.
into it so it becomes a profitable venture, and then everybody profits from it. Everybody benefits from it because I've said this before. I'll say it again. You want to make America great? Have less losers. What's the best way to have less losers? Have people start from an even position. Have people start from a place where they have a community, where they have some sort of role models or guidance or a safe place to be, where their community is more safe because whether it's they have better police presence or more compassionate police presence. Figure out a way to stop people before they commit these horrible crimes. Do something to make these places better places economically. Give people more opportunity. It's totally a possible thing to do. It's not like you're asking people to breathe air underwater. You're asking people to do things that have been done in other cities, right? Cities have sucked and they've gotten better, and cities have been great and they've gotten bad. We kind of can figure out what causes both of those situations and throw a bunch of fucking money at it.
Nope. I don't want to step in. It's this is why I love these conversations, because I'm sitting here listening to you and thinking that is
Eyes
a
open for a
potential
look.
real solution.
It's a real solution.
It's a real solution, and what frustrates me also is that, you know, then you get, what does that look like? What does that feel?
Reloading.
You know what? Here's what it looks like. Last summer, when all these corporations were guilty that they hadn't done enough for social justice causes, I can tell you it was probably one of the biggest fundraising pushes for social justice reform organizations across this country, to the point where they raised more money than they probably ever did, right? And it was like the summer of like white guilt. right? Or the summer of 2012. And I bet you that amount of money eclipses the billions. Because I can draw on examples and organizations that I may be involved in potentially or otherwise that benefited from it. That's to make a company or a corporation feel good in the moment and check the box that I'm doing that. But what you just said, if you look at like what Bill Gates and the Billionaires Pledge have done, whether it's for clean water or for other public health endeavors, this is a public health human rights crisis
at every level.
The way that
eyes open for a lurker.
The disparities in the treatment of people of color in this country. Is it solvable ever? Who knows? But what you're suggesting seems to me like if you're going to make an investment in anything, how about make an investment of that? And it makes total sense because it was funny because when you said how you make America great again, make less losers.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like I'm tired of hearing these stories of after the fact people realize that it was my upbringing and the nightmarish situation I was born into that had I had the perspective I have now, if I was able to overcome that, I may otherwise have been on the path I'm on now. And it's like, it makes you sort of
Red
feel
is ready to
hopeless and
roast.
hopeless inside that, well, yeah, you're right. And how do you solve that problem of someone being born into circumstances?
No more lurker.
Professional fighters that from Brownsville, and sort of started with no chance.
But thank God they found fighting, because fighting gave them at least some kind of an opportunity to do better. A lot of people never find anything. And this idea that just because someone does it, this is what drives me crazy. When someone says, oh, look at this guy, he made it into the NBA, he lived in a shit neighborhood. Look at this guy, he became a rapper, he made it out of the streets. Like, so what? How many people don't? That's the craziest path ever. The path of being a world championship fighter, to get out of the ghetto, as a person who uses his knuckles to punch another guy in the face, that is one of the craziest ways to become successful ever. And there's so many variables that are outside of your control, like genetics, speed, muscle fibers, whether or not you can take a punch. There's so many different things, whether or not you have good coaching.
I'll be back in 40-something seconds. Shit.
Send you to the wolves right away. The idea that a guy should be able to do it because this guy did it, or that, or Mike Tyson did it, you're out of your fucking mind.
It's so hard.
But it's easy for people to say if they've not come from those circumstances. All the people that I know that are all those pull yourself up by your bootstraps never had to fucking do that. They never had to do that.
Oh, we talked about this. It's the most frustrating thing to me. It's like, oh, this guy did it, that guy
Shut
did
the
it.
fuck up.
I mean, listen, I have direct experience with it. I managed Zab Judah for a period. Now, Zab was, and like I light up when I talk about him because there's something about him that I just love. There's something magnetic and different and in a way righteous. Has he made his share of mistakes? Yes. And if you see what the circumstances that this guy was born into and what he had to overcome, and he was so gifted as a fighter, but he didn't have a chin, right? But he also took punches that people didn't see. But putting all the boxing part aside, did it work out for Zab the way it should have? So partially,
He's
he
famous.
became a world champion.
He became a world champion.
He's famous, but
well respected.
Well respected, and I love the guy. And we don't talk as much as we used to, but and then he had this brain bleed because he stuck around too long, and it was like, oh,
I didn't know about that.
Oh my God, he was in a real bad situation. But for every Zab Judah and Shannon Briggs and Mike Tyson, and I mentioned those examples because they're all from that neighborhood, and they all happen to be dear friends of mine, right?
Shannon Briggs is going to fight Rampage Jackson?
Yeah, and he won't listen to me or anyone else. I'll just do it.
What do you mean?
He just shouldn't do it.
Well, aren't they going to fight like 1 round boxing, 1 round MMA?
I don't know.
Is that what they're doing?
I don't know. I don't talk to him enough about that because all we do when we
I might have
talk
made
is
that
not-
up. Now that I'm thinking about that, I think that's Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, and he's fighting Rod Tan, and that's how they're doing it. 1 round, more time.
Well, Shannon's just like, it just ends up being like a laugh fest.
Find out if that's true.
Smell
I mean,
explosives.
he might be. I might be right about that. It might have. That might be what Quentin agreed to.
I know that they were beefing back and
Where
forth.
is that creep?
Rampage is a dangerous
Got
man.
eyes on a lurker!
That's not a joke fight. But if
reloading.
he gets into an MMA fight with Rampage, Rampage is a fucking serious wrestler. He's so strong. There's a video of Rampage Jackson. It's one of the most horrific slam KOs in the history of the sport. He's fighting Ricardo Arona. Ricardo Arona was this badass jiu-jitsu guy. And Ricardo Arona catches Rampage Jackson in a triangle. You know what a triangle is?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got his legs wrapped around Rampage's arm, one arm, and his neck. Rampage picks him up off the ground like a pillow.
I've seen it. It's slammed.
Bent all the way down and then headbutts him, from the impact. Like as he's driving him down, his head slams into Ricardo Arona's head, and then he punches him a couple times. He's out cold. Ricardo Arona was never the same.
But Shannon Briggs, is he able?
Is that the Shannon Briggs? Yeah.
Shannon Briggs, he's enormous, big, strong dude.
So was Ricardo Arona. Oh, okay. I mean, not as big, but Ricardo Arona was jacked.
But it's interesting you raised that example. The next person I was going to talk
Eyes
about
open for alert.
was actually recently in a video when Shannon Briggs and Rampage Jackson were going back and forth. His name's Curtis Stevens. And he was another kid from Brooklyn. He was a little brother. And he was one half of what they call the chin checkers. Back in the day, my brother was a ring announcer. And he used to do all the local shows. And actually was on HBO as a ring announcer too. And he did Paulie Malignaggi's first world title fight, my brother's debut on HBO.
Wow.
So the great Dubini, shout out to the best
Where is
magician.
that creep?
He's a great fucking musician. His magician skills are top notch. I was very impressed. I mean, we were all hanging out at dinner and he was doing shit. I was like, what did you just do?
And you're a guy that is like got a good eye for magic and catching it. He's
very good.
He's very good, and that happened naturally. So yeah, check him out.
It was fun.
Dubin Magic, the great Dubini.
Is there a website?
He's got an Instagram. Yeah.
Is it with Dubin Magic?
I'll look it up and we'll get it in.
We'll get it in.
But so
look it up now. People aren't gonna know.
Let me do it now. So what happens is in the video, Shannon Briggs and Rampage Jackson are going back and forth. You know, I don't know if it was playfully doing it.
It was a little playful, but also a little serious.
So one of the guys in the video is this kid, Curtis Stevens. So Curtis, and the reason my brother came up is that he's one half of the Chin Checkers from Brownsville, Brooklyn. Curtis, Showtime Stevens. And my brother would announce him at these small club shows at the Hammerstein Ballroom. And he was the most devastating one-punch knockout power for a welterweight, 54-pounder, and he created a buzz in boxing that was so unbelievable.
Hey, there you go.
that was the great Dubini blowing Joe.
That's hilarious.
And Tony's mind.
Yeah, Tony's got a card. He's holding a card that your
Grid
brother
is powered.
did something to.
So
we're like, oh my god. So it is Dubin Magic.
Yeah, Dubin Magic on Instagram. He will blow your mind. And there's my wife giving him the black card at the bottom.
That was right after we did Matches for Lord.
Yeah, that was awesome. So, yeah, that was a great night.
That was fun.
Because Greg just happened to have he had magic about him, and we were all out.
Got eyes on a lurker!
Celebrating the epic conquest of the garden, and he was like, show us what's magic.
Yeah, that was dope.
So this kid, Curtis Stevens, was like gonna be the second coming. He's like a little Mike Tyson. And, whether it was personal issues, career issues, he didn't make it. He's got a comeback fight coming up. He must be 35, 36, whatever he is. But there are way more Curtis Stevens that still are like, fuck, what am I going to do now that boxing didn't work out? Did he make some money? He fought, you'll recognize who he is. He fought Golovkin.
Oh, okay.
And he got hit by Golovkin. And he was the guy when he was on the ground. He was like, had this look of shock, like, what the fuck did I just get hit? So
Golovkin does have PTSD.
I don't know if he still does. Looks, I don't know what it is.
Looks a little like he's been going out to Tijuana for special medication. He looks good.
Looking jacked for a guy his
I
age.
know.
Right?
He's like 37 now, and he looks as good. No, he looks better than he's ever looked. His last fight, he looked fantastic.
Yeah, and the energy level has you a little suspicious, but
Well, you know, boxing is not. You know, the UFC has its problems with
Pissing me off.
supplements. I mean, and I use that term loosely. But the vast majority have to be clean because USADA does not let them go at 6 o'clock in the morning. Boxing doesn't have that.
that's not true.
Well, you do if you sign up for WADA, but it's
VADA.
VADA, sorry.
Slow them
But the
down.
thing is, UFC has it built in. So all the fighters get tested, and you get tested randomly. It doesn't. You don't get to opt out, right? So like, there's certain fights where people decide to opt out of VADA testing.
Really?
Yeah. You know, all boxing is not VADA tested.
I was just being facetious. Listen, Shakur Stevenson, I manage him with James Prince. Shout out to the big homie James Prince. And you know,
Barbed
I
wire down.
personally think that Shakur is the best fighter on the planet.
He's fantastic.
And
He's absolutely fantastic.
he has got everything.
Everything.
And when I say everything, I mean, dare I say, Floyd Mayweather-esque.
He's something special.
So Shakur is fighting Oscar Valdez to unify the 130-pound titles on April 30th at the Garden. I'd love to have you there in town. And look, Oscar Valdez failed the drug test
That's right,
before
bitches.
his last fight, and it was for an amphetamine called phentermine, and it's a weight cut. I had the opportunity to get very well versed in that, and because Andre Ward thought Kovalev was on something or suspected it, so I educated myself as much as I could. I
Doorbuster.
joined the rec.
Nice.
And I could run, any supplement through it. Margaret Goodman, I got to know very well, who runs VADA. But look, he has been in a random drug testing program that's been sanctioned by the WBC for a while. And then Shakur,
I'm reloading.
you know, if you have good management, which I'll give myself that much credit, James Princeton made sure that there's never a lapse in the testing from September all the way through the fight. It should be that there's a central governing body that dictates that. But when you're in different states and different sanctioning organizations,
Yeah.
and that's what frustrates me when, like, I'm not listening to Dana White or Trump, but people don't get the benefit of having UFC being the central governing body. You can make rules like that can protect fighters. So, in any event, that's
No, I agree with that as well, and I think that the argument against that is that the UFC is a monopoly, right? But that's not real. The reason why that's not real is because there's all these stories about guys going over to Bellator and making more money in Bellator, or guys going over to the PFL. There's a lot of organizations now. There's ONE FC. If you're a championship level or a high level professional fighter, you can go to these other organizations and you can get paid, especially if you have a name. They're willing to give you a bigger chunk of the pie because they're trying to build up their organization.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
But the point is, the UFC check the fuck out of the fighters. But even through that, do you know? Have you ever seen the YouTube page "More Plates, More Dates"?
This'll help.
It's a funny name, but the guy who runs it, his name's Derek, and he's really like really brilliant, and knows so much about the human chemistry and about ways that people use performance-enhancing drugs and cheat. And he talks about it openly because he's done a lot of steroids, he's done a lot of performance-enhancing drugs, he understands and he also runs a hormone clinic, which is like hormone replacement therapy. So he knows what you can and cannot get away with. So he analyzes some of the blood work by some of the people that have passed USADA, and he calls bullshit. And he breaks it down very scientifically. He talks about it like why is this person's testosterone level so low? And they have like some trace amount of this steroid that's in their system. That seems to indicate to me that they were doing something.
Oh, that's
and then
fascinating.
their testosterone dropped. And why would a super athlete of the highest order have such a low testosterone, a blood level testosterone? It's like,
That's deep.
yeah, well, he's on top of it. It's also the testosterone to epitestosterone. There's a testosterone ratio, right? Like they're looking for testosterone compared to estrogen, testosterone compared to all these other hormones, and there's a balance that has to be. There's like a natural level of balance. But he's pointing out, like, a lot of these balances are way off. Like, there's nothing that would make them off other than cheating. So what we need is like a far more comprehensive examination of that individual to find out what's causing it.
With VADA, speaking to them, that's the job of what they do is just telling you if there's the presence of a substance. So yeah, I went deep down a rabbit hole with the Catlin Institute in California and with Oliver Catlin. Because I just wondered if I was in charge of policing.
I could use some help.
Not policing, just understanding the testing procedure. Got around the word and not sure. But I have as much knowledge as possible.
You ever talk to that Balco guy? What's his name again? Victor Conte. We had him on the podcast. Very interesting. Because here's a guy that used to do that. Right?
Come on, bitches!
Clear. Yeah. Barry Bonds. Inspecting this stuff. He actually came up with a formula and did into something that either they tested. Because it's a molecule removed, or it's like something that's different from. This is one of the reasons why.
Wow, they could have sent me some help.
Even the UFC, they hold on to these samples of blood and urine, rather, and then they test them when new technology becomes available and
Fire
when
in
new
the hole!
knowledge of new supplements
This'll help.
become available. Because there are things that can avoid detection initially, and then they come up with new methods to check. And because of that, there was a bunch of medalists, and I believe gold medalists from Russia in wrestling had their medals removed because they went back and looked into old samples and they go, well,
Swapping
look
in
at
the
this.
big gun.
This guy's pissed hot. Like, we just didn't have the ability to detect it.
That's how it's done.
Yeah, no, it's tricky.
Did you ever see Icarus?
No.
Fucking amazing documentary. You
No,
need to
never
see
see
it.
it.
You need to see it.
The second
Icarus
person.
is Brian Fogel. And Brian Fogel, this is the most fortuitous combination of events while one was filming a documentary. So this is what happens. Brian Fogel is filming this documentary about himself. Brian is an athlete and he's a cyclist, so he decides to enter into this cycling competition, and he's going to do it two
Good
times.
enough.
He's going to do it 1 year completely clean, and then he's going to hire someone to dope him up so he can see and document the effects and put it in this documentary. He's like, let's see what it does.
And did anybody know that he was doing it?
Yes. I mean, not the people in the race.
Right,
No.
that's what I meant.
No, I think he did it. He wanted to do it like a cheater would do it, but he was documenting. So I don't think he had a chance to win. Honestly, I think he's a very good cyclist. He's not. It's not like he was a marathon. So he does it once this way, and then he hires this guy,
Gotta tear
Gregory
it is set.
Lutsenko. And Gregory is the guy who runs the, air quotes, anti-doping program for Russia. But really, he's just doping everything. So what Gregory does is he gives him this protocol, he tells him what to do, how to do it, what to have it, and while this is all going on, it turns out that the Sochi Olympics have been rigged, and they find these microscopic abrasions in the urine jars. And it turns out that these urine jars that were supposedly untamperable, you couldn't get in them, the Russians had figured out a way to get into them. And they devised this wild scheme where they made literally a fucking hole in the wall. And one person would hand out the good urine, and the other person would give them the tainted urine.
During the Olympics?
During the Olympics.
Holy
so they would swap
shit.
urine. So they had this place where they stored the urine. They swapped the urine. And according to Gregory Lutsenko,
Want
the
me?
Russians
Come
doped
get me.
everybody except the figure skaters. Turns out for the figure skaters, these fine movements, there's actually like a negative consequence of giving them testosterone. All these do. They're the only people who were clean. But they did this through trial and error. So what they did was they doped everyone.
And is this part of the documentary?
Mhm.
He goes into this?
So while this is going on, this guy gets caught and he has to flee Russia. So he flees Russia while this documentary is being filmed. He's in protective custody right now in Russia. The Russians want to kill him because he gave up all the goods. And they get removed from the Olympics. So in Brazil, when the Russian athletes went to compete in the Rio Olympics, they were not representing Russia. They couldn't represent Russia because Russia was banned from being able to have teams. So many of their athletes were not able to compete. And through this documentary, he really captures the moment where all this stuff is discovered.
That's fascinating.
It's a fucking wild documentary.
Because I was just, somebody told me that they cycle recreationally with Lance Armstrong now up in Aspen.
I thought you meant cycle drugs. I was like, damn, Lance is still hitting the needle.
And I was like, wow, that must be interesting. And I was like, it's like fucking, what is that like? I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, this was just like a couple of months ago in Atlanta. That was one of Shakur's fights.
You should meet Lance. He's a complicated person. He's a very interesting guy, very smart guy. He was in a dirty sport. Bill Burr had a fucking great bit about it. He's like, they were all doing drugs. He goes, he was just the best. Out of all those fucking psychos, he was the best. And he's dead on.
He belongs in I can see Burr's. He belongs in, he's a first ballot Hall of Fame fucking doper.
Well, they were all doping. Here's the thing. When they take away Lance Armstrong's jersey and they say that he didn't win, you have to go back past 18th place to find someone who didn't test positive.
No shit.
Yes.
It was that deep.
It's a dirty sport. It's a 100%. I don't want to say now. I don't know anything about it now. But when Lance was competing, it was a fucking dirty sport.
That's why, he's a good example. Like, he's before this whole phrase cancel culture came about, right? But here's a good example of a guy that, without context, without frame of reference, we write people off so easily. And like, I do believe, I don't know if Brian Stevenson coined it, initiative, but I really do believe this. And it's hard to live with all the time. Is that we are all better than the worst things we've done. If you took anybody's life and put it through a mild microscope, you'd find way worse shit
Ball coming in.
mine or the next person's than what Lance Armstrong did. And that is the problem. I feel so conflicted about media and social media and just how everybody's life is in our veins. Other people's lives, your life. That's why it's difficult to understand and process.
Silence that son of a bitch!
Yes. Well, there's a guy named Alan Levinovitz who's doing that. He said he calls it processed information. The same way you have processed food is bad for you. Yeah. There's processed information.
Put the screamer down!
Rather than like being around a person, talking to that person, or experiencing your whole life. You can, like, someone could say something abrasive.
It's a bow!
Decide to fuck that guy forever. But what he is trying to say is,
I've seen it happen.
But it's not good for the person that does that either. For the person that writes people off like that. For you to have the least charitable impression of someone possible and just decide right away that you're done with that. It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for everybody because you either are not thinking or you're thinking and you're dismissing complexity. You're dismissing emotions, you're dismissing circumstance, you're dismissing all the different aspects that make a person so variable. People vary so much depending upon the stress that they're under, depending upon what's going on in their personal life or private life. There's so much going on with human beings. You can't just look at a tweet. You can't just look at a moment in time. And we're doing that now. And we're doing that to the detriment of discourse and to the detriment of friendship and compassion and community. We're just deciding this person is a bad person. This person's irredeemable. And irredeemable is a very dangerous thing. It's a way of othering people.
It's the most dangerous thing because, look, a big part of what I am, this new endeavor that I'm taking on is clemency. And you know, at the Perlmutter Center, if it's going to be called the Perlmutter Center for Forensic Science, Education, and Criminal Justice Reform. We haven't arrived at a name. But clemency is a very important process that has at its heart and soul. Not only I will grant you clemency because I think you may not have done this or didn't do this, but because I think you are worthy of redemption and forgiveness. And instead of throwing out your life or a large portion of it, I'm going to see past it and redeem you. Help redeem you. And it's up to us as the public at large to start putting pressure on politicians regardless of, because you know how easy it is. It's so like you just sort of crystallize it. The easiest thing to do is to say, fuck it, I'm done with that person. And then put them out of your mind and consciousness. It's easy when you hear someone was accused of committing this crime to say, fuck them, they deserve it. And I see that happening with governors who have this unbelievable magic wand and power. Maybe even on a higher plane than police officers and other members of law enforcement to say, you know what, I'm going to treat this clemency process as a real thing. And I am not saying this as a Democrat because I don't know that I am any longer what I am, another independent human being. But if you take Ron DeSantis, for example, in Florida, the clemency regime in Florida needs to be overhauled and there needs to be human pressure from Democrats and from human beings. One of my clients is one of the oldest men sitting on death row in this country, James Dale. I talked about him before. And he's one of 3 people in their 70s and 80s that are sitting on death row.
This'll help.
And the clemency regime in Florida is one that exists, but is not in practice in any real practical way.
Don't you think that if a governor does have the ability to pardon people, I mean, they do, they also have almost, I mean, next to the president has the most obligations, right, because they have to deal with international issues. But the amount of issues that a governor has to deal with, the amount of things they have on their plate, the idea that we're asking them to go over thousands and thousands of cases just in their state where people might be innocent, there should be some sort of a program that examines all of these cases. Don't you think there should be, like, each state, if you're going to have, like, you know, defendants, and you're going to have prosecutors, and you're going to have incarceration and the death penalty and all the various things that go along with that. Shouldn't you have a wrongful incarceration department?
Something
like
you should see.
An actual organization that can go over all the pertinent facts, the DNA, witness testimony, everything. Find holes in it. Someone who's completely dedicated to truth, not dedicated to winning or losing, winning on each side, right?
Yes.
That's what they need.
The answer is yes.
It should be a part of the criminal justice system.
And here's the thing, Joe. It exists in some municipalities. There are these things called conviction integrity units that re-review old cases, and they are an arm of the district attorney's office. Now, in New York, we just put one in place, and I believe it's being headed up by Terry Rosenblatt.
Eyes open for alert.
Who is, if I'm not mistaken, is being headed up by her old friend of mine. Where they re-review old cases, and they're an arm of the district attorney's office.
Auto-terrorist
Jacksonville,
scanning.
Florida, that has been responsible for helping get people exonerated. Those are exonerations, and those are re-reviewing cases. But getting to your point about the governor, you're A, absolutely right, and B, it exists. He doesn't act very well in Ron DeSantis or any other governor. They have a clemency board. And then there are all the top statewide elected officials have a staff. They have a lot of resources to re-review these cases. So here's how this works. Nikki Fried, who is the Secretary of Commissioner of Agriculture, I went up to Tallahassee to try to lobby on his behalf to set him loose. This case was on the whole 2020. I'm on it. You can read about it. I talk to you about the team. There's stunning evidence of his innocence. I presented it in an evidentiary hearing in Florida, and it keeps on getting denied on procedural grounds. No one wants to look at the facts. If there was ever that get the time barred bringing it up to the real killer confessed to me in a jail cell. He has no reason to do that. And then he doesn't want to testify in open court because
let's go.
But check out the 2020 special on James Daly. And so when you're failing in the courts, clemency becomes, okay, let me present it to you. When I was up there trying to talk to people on the clemency board, Nikki Fried was the only one that would give me a meeting at a time where she wasn't running for governor. Now I'm supporting her because she gives a shit. I spoke to Ron DeSantis. It was a favor for him to meet with me. He was 2.5 hours late.
Here we go. Meet
and
Dax.
his decision was like reading a tweet. What about the wet pants? I said, well, he goes, and I have 30 seconds.
Is that creep?
30 seconds.
I said, what about the wet pants? And you have 30 seconds? I said, Mr. Governor, sir. And he said, and take off your mask. This is like at the height of the pandemic. And I was like, what is my mask? Take it off. And I'm like, okay. It was so bananas. And I was like, I'm not in a mask debate with you. In 30 seconds, you want me to tell you what about the pants? If you give me the benefit of a hearing,
We gotta go!
all I'm asking you to do is listen. He's like, you don't really think that I would let him go? What are you asking me to do? Commute his sentence? I said, I'm asking you to listen. And by this point, he had turned his back, trying to walk away from me down the hall.
Reload!
And I said, yeah, so that was our meeting? And he didn't answer, and his aide goes to me, that was great, right? He engaged with you. I said, but that's your definition of great.
Inbound!
Yes, and I'm not, if anything, I am tempering the story. It was so bizarre to me that just listen. And then if at that point you want to do something, let me get the facts out there. There's another guy that's sitting on death row in Florida named Nelson Nelson must be in his 80s by now. This case is nuts. Nelson has a flat-out alibi. These murders were committed in Miami. I think it's a former business partner of his. Look at the Nelson Serrano case. He is in Atlanta. He has the strongest alibi possible. And the state of Florida argued that he had time to get on a flight, make it to Miami, get back on a flight, make it back to Atlanta, and commit this crime without anyone having seen it. They don't take into account the fact that the flight was delayed.
Don't they have flight
records? And they cobbled together a timeline in which he could have gone under an assumed name. It is bizarre. It is bizarre.
What year is this?
This must have been in the 90s. But the murders happened. But then he's living in, I think, Ecuador, somewhere in either South or Central America. He's retired. This was his former business partner that got killed. And they just figured he must be good for it, and they tried him. And he's sitting there on death row. And if you listen, I mean, this is the state in the country that has the most death row exonerations by far. So there were 39 people have been exonerated from death row in Florida. Let's give this clemency hearing to your listeners. What can we do? I'm gonna get to a case in a minute that's happening in Texas. A woman that is on the verge of being executed. But what can you do with pressure on governors? Ron DeSantis, and it's not just Ron DeSantis, Gavin Newsom. You put pressure on Democratic governors, Republican governors. Take yourself out of this party affiliation and think about the human being.
What's going on with the woman in Texas?
I'm going to faint if I don't go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I can see in your face. We'll be right back. And we're back. How was that? Good? Relief? Sweet relief, right?
It was like a supernatural relief because I was so into the conversation. I didn't want it to end.
I know, but it's like a lot of resources thinking about holding back the pee.
I got a weak bladder.
Oh, he's weak. It's normal.
Well, I'm on this medication to help relax it. So
Then medication to relax.
my bladder. Apparently, I have something called bladder neck syndrome, which causes reloading of all the muscles that I should be proud of being
Shredded.
shredded.
You owe me.
It's not my fucking bladder neck.
So your bladder neck tenses up too much?
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
I won't forget what you
Blessing
did.
you with that genetic.
Is that a genetic thing?
Yeah,
Is there a side effect to that?
No, it's just like you have a strong bladder neck and you need to relax it.
Oh, so the medication makes you pee more.
It relaxes your bladder neck, yeah, so that you can. It doesn't make you pee more, but it allows you to fully eliminate.
Oh. The more you know.
Got eyes on a lurker.
That's like those NBC things, the rainbow. The more you know.
I'm old enough.
Yeah. So this woman in Texas.
Oh, so
Eyes open for a lurker.
look, if there ever anything that I don't know, I can check this out. That's where we are. That's fine. Melissa Lucio is set to be executed. I'm reloading. There is hopefully forming or will continue to form enough of a groundswell of support. She's been on death row for more than a decade, close to 15 years. And she's accused of killing her child. And I want to preface the story of Melissa Lucio by saying, if you're inspired by anything I say and you want to do anything, if you just Google Melissa Lucio, and it's Lucio and Innocence Project, right on the landing page of the Innocence Project, you will get.
Yo, lurker outside! Shoot!
But here's someone. And this goes back to rebuilding communities and why this is so important. This is someone that was born into awful circumstances. History of sexual abuse that started when she was 6 years old. And finds herself being interrogated by the police. And why I reference why it's so important to build in communities. Not that that's going to cure all instances of sexual abuse, but oftentimes sexual abuse happens in lower socioeconomic, depressed areas where there isn't the social emotional intelligence that people, it's proliferated through generations. It's not always, but she was born into awful circumstances and not very well off, and she's at the hands of this terrible abuse. Why I tell that story is with stronger communities, I think we get less instances of that, but and many other things. But the reason why I raise that is because someone that has had past trauma like that is way more susceptible to being broken down during an interrogation because they have a certain vulnerability to them. So she is the mother of 12 and is pregnant with twins and is accused of killing her child. There's no physical evidence of any abuse whatsoever.
Yeah, that is a motherfucking rap.
Oh,
I'm up out this bitch. Love, peace, motherfucking chicken grease. Holla.